This video is sponsored by Wildlife Command Center Coffee. More about them at the end of the video. Hey everybody, it's me, John Ward, and I am back with another One Filmmaker, One Film. And today my guest is...
Hi, my name's Ian Mair. I am a filmmaker, obviously. Very honored to be here on John's show. I'm a father, I'm a husband, and was a school teacher for quite a while, and I've been making movies since I was about 9. So I'm really honored to be here tonight and talking to John about what I do.
Awesome. Yes. And thank you for being here. I am very happy about that because something came early in the mail and I didn't want to say anything about it, but these came early in the mail.
All right. Glad you got them.
So this is, hold on here. I always do this. So there's the first one. So that's the first Blood Cove there. And then this is the second one. And that's what we're going to be talking about today. Ian was awesome enough to send me both of these, and he also sent me a couple other films too, which we'll have to talk about on a whole other episode. But I'll put links, to where you can watch these or get them. Yeah, these are all from Kanaki, and if he wants you to have them, he could send me a link. If not, you could just go straight to YouTube to watch them, because that's where I originally saw them. I wanted to do both Blood Cove films because there is, parts 1 and 2, because there is a special announcement coming up. And I thought that it would be fun to talk about both films. So the first half will be the first movie, and then the second half will be the second film. And so this could be maybe even a little companion piece to what's going to be going on later on. Also, just to let people know, there are major spoilers here because we are talking about the film from beginning to end. So I won't try to give away everything, but there will be a considerable amount that we're talking about, just to let people know. Like I said, the films are on YouTube. You could stop this right now, go watch them and then come back, or watch this and then go watch them, whatever makes you happy.
Just watch them either way.
Yeah, just watch them. Yeah, just go right there. I'll have links down below. So it's a whole YouTube channel dedicated to Moonlight Films. What's Moonlight Films?
It's a good question. I've wondered for years. Moonlight Films is a company that I own with my business partner, James Stevenson, longtime friend. We started making these little sort of backyard horror films when we were I started when I was 9. He come on when we were about 11 or 12. And after a couple, 2 or 3 test films in high school, made with mostly just friends and family, it technically, the name came out in 2008, but the company became official in 2012. And we're based here in Southern Indiana, and we specialize in micro-budget horror. So it's, we're up to 15, 16, 17 movies, something like that.
Oh, wow.
I'd have to go back and count. The early ones we made in high school, we don't claim anymore. So, but pretty much everything from After Dark in 2012 onward, I think we're up to like 15, 16. Anyway.
Yeah, and I checked IMDb, and yeah, you got a fair amount of films on there, and so I was impressed with that. And when I watched Blood Cove, I was like, wow, these are really good, parts 1 and 2, and I was impressed. And because
Thank you.
Oh, sure, you're welcome, definitely. Because one of the last interviews that I did, it was for a series called Death Park. And I was watching these, and I'm like, I'm like really into these. Like those films I really like the Death Park stuff I really got into. And so I reached out to the director, and I'm just like, can I have you on? And then I watched these, and I'm like, oh my God, I'm getting that same vibe. Let me reach out to Ian and see if I can get him onto the show. Because recently I've just come across a whole crop of films that are so much better than what I thought that they were going to be, because I was watching films that looked like they were shot on somebody's phone. And I'm not saying that's everybody or anybody that's been on the show, let's say, but I've just watched just movies that, you know, I purchased and I'm like, okay, yeah, this is all right. I mean, but it looks like they were shot on their phone. Your films, the Blood Cove films, look very professional, and they're well shot, they're well edited, the sound is good, the acting is good, the effects are good, the killer looks really cool. You know, it's this guy here that's right on the front, and he is known as the Skull. um so that's why I wanted you on board. Plus, you do a whole bunch of stuff on these. You edit, you're the cameraman, you're the writer, the producer, and the director. How does that work for you know, making one of these films? You're kind of doing a lot of stuff yourself.
You know, you do have to wear a lot of hats when you work at the level that my team and I do. Everybody wears a lot of hats. You may be an actor in the film, but you also might do some makeup on the side. And I am very lucky. In addition to all the jobs that I do, I've got such a good team. It's a consistent team that shows back up each time. Of course, James Stevenson, co-producer, he's my right-hand man on set. You know, he may be taking behind-the-scenes pictures. He may be transporting people back and forth from locations. He may be getting props and things ready to go. And our effects guy, Darren Morgan, he's involved in a lot of things too. He plays the Michael Rivers character in the first Blood Cove, but he is also hands-on with all of the effects in pretty much every film he's done since he's come on board. And the actors as well, you know, actors and actresses, they all play a lot of key roles behind the scenes, even just offering ideas or bringing their own costumes or being willing to loan out their vehicles or their houses, things like that. I have been really, really, really lucky with the team of people that I work with. I mean, I could go on for days with, you know, my wife is super supportive. My brother, Ben, who actually plays the killer in both the Blood Cove movies, he always is playing a monster or something in our films, and he builds props and things behind the scenes. So, very good group. You know, and like I say, in addition to all the things that I do too, which requires a lot of coffee. So,
Oh,
but I love it.
I hear you on that one. I hear
That's
you.
right. I knew I liked you.
Yeah. Coffee people always think alike. So
I agree.
With bringing up your brother, because I was curious about, you know, about the killer, the Skull. Is he the only one to play him, or do you have kind of like multiple people on different days, or is he like the only guy to play the killer?
He is the only one. I will schedule around Ben because he is extremely good at these kind of roles. And the thing about Ben is he doesn't do it just because he's my brother. He wants to come on board and do these things, but he doesn't like to show his actual face in the movies. He wants to be in a mask. He has done some roles where he's been visible, but not very often. He likes to be behind the mask, and he's the sweetest person. One of the sweetest people I know. When he puts on the mask, any of the monster masks, he just comes to life. And those little things with the hand twitches, and some of the things with his shoulders that he does, that's all him. That's not really me giving a lot of direction. That's just him taking the character serious. So, bless you.
Thank you. Yeah, he does a really good job, and I've noticed that. I don't think he's listed in the credits, is he?
He's not. That was an active decision. The people who follow the movies know who it is, but he and I both kind of like the idea of just the casual fan of the films, just sort of leaving it in mystery as to who plays that character, just to give it a little more intrigue. So that was an active decision not to credit him in either of the films. Although, starting with part 3, and we'll get into that later. I would like to credit him in the opening credits because I feel like he does really kind of own that character. So.
Well, yeah, that would make sense. Would you use his real name, or would you use like a kind of like a fake name?
His real name.
His real name. Okay.
I know. I think, and I may be wrong on this, John. I know for a fact that Richard Brooker is named as Jason in the opening credits of Friday the 13th Part 3, and I don't believe anybody else has ever really credited in the main credits of the Friday the 13th movies. I may be wrong. Maybe when Kane Hodder got on board. So I thought with Part 3 it'd be kind of an homage to that too, to give him credit in the third part. And I know they switched their actors, but that won't mean anything to anybody else. But just how my brain works. So
well, in a way it does. In a way it does work, because at least the Jasons were always played by different people. But then when you came to Freddy Krueger, it wasn't until Part 4 that it said Robert Englund in, and then it said A Nightmare on Elm Street 4. And because everybody knew that's why you're going to the movie. I'm not going to see A Nightmare on Elm Street for one of the kids that gets killed. I'm going to see Freddy. So they gave him top bill credit in the credits of the opening, of the film. So it would make sense.
I knew at some point that he had a big credit in the opening, but I didn't know at what point it was. So that's neat. Part 4. Okay.
Yeah, so it makes sense if your brother's always going to be playing the skull, that at some point he would get at least the and credit, at the end. Something like that, beginning of the film and or whatever. It would make sense. It makes logical sense to me.
Yeah, and he and Darren worked very closely on that because, of course, Darren Morgan, he and I decided on the mask, and then he did all the painting on it to make it look that way, which is supposed to look kind of like a fun house. Maybe the character got it out of the haunted house that he is in, and pulled it out of a box or something and used that. And in the script of Part 3, if all goes well, we have a flashback set in the early 70s, like 78, late 70s, that would show that origin of the character actually getting the mask. But it's nice because Ben and Darren are friends in real life too, and they can work well together to sort of get that character, in the best shape possible. So anyway, so between all of us, we I think we brought him to life pretty well, or we tried.
Oh yeah, no, I think he does a great job. And why because one of my questions, but this is a few pages in, so since you brought up the mask, why a skull mask? And yeah, why does it have those kind of painted marks on it? I think it looks really cool, but why a skull?
I think part of it was just something that was kind of identifiable. We've tried that with the last few movies, is pick things that people would recognize a little bit, because it sounds terrible. If you get so original with things, a lot of times people are like, yeah, I don't recognize that. I'm not gonna mess with it. We called something demoniac one time, which is a kind of an odd word. And it's a good show, but it didn't do all that well. And I think because the word and the visual was so kind of out in left field, that feels like, I don't know what that is. But a skull, people know that. They're like, oh, I get it. It's a skull mask. Okay. It's not, I wouldn't say it's super original, but it's also something people could recognize. And the colors are based on that haunted house location, kind of alluding to that idea that maybe that character got that from that haunted house. So it would go along with that color scheme of that building. So
yeah, because I'm looking at the back of this here, and he's right up there. Because it fits. It's but you made it original. That's the thing, is that you took the skull mask and then you added that design, that paint to it, that makes it so if you had a scene of like a bunch of skulls and he was right in the middle, like somebody's walking by, you'd be like, oh shit, that's him. Because you would see those painted. Yeah, I mean, he looked totally different from all the other skulls, which is cool. But maybe the person who's, just moving around, like trying to avoid him, may not notice it, but the audience would.
Sure. Well, and that would be a neat scare. And what, if we get to do more of these, is to have, in the first movie when she's looking and sees the chef dummy or whatever it is, and then pans over and sees him. If you're in a haunted house, she wouldn't think much of it. It's just another dummy, But and the mask is definitely attributed to Darren, and he really does a good job with those effects. And we all help with the effects in different ways. Where there's times I may paint more of a face or whatever, or James is building hands for a monster or whatever. But in this case, Darren really did a great job with that mask, and bringing and the burned version in the sequel. So
yeah, that was cool. So we'll definitely talk about that. So how did you come up with the idea for this film?
Growing up, I watched more of the black and white Universal monster movies. That's really where I got my love for horror films, was through Frankenstein and the Wolfman and those types of things. But as I got into high school, I really got into the slasher genre, and especially Halloween. Halloween is always and probably will always be my favorite. That series is kind of a roller coaster of quality and storylines and all that, but I still love it. And I love the idea of that, and with Friday, and I guess Nightmare too. They had that town, and you could feel Haddonfield when you watched, especially 1, 2, and 4. I feel like you really could feel that town. You had the police station, you had the local drugstore, you had the hospital, you had all that. And I think it's kind of a weird way of thinking about it, but when coming up with Beansboro, the town that's featured in these movies, I wanted to give a town some personality in the context of a horror film. So I think that's where a lot of it started, was just brainstorming, hey, what can the town be like? What can the characters in this town be like? And then create your slasher character around that. So as goofy as it sounds, I think the idea of creating a world meant more initially than the slasher killer himself. And then, of course, over time, that became the important thing, was the killer himself. And I think becomes more important as time goes on with the films. So I don't know if that really answered the question or not.
Sure. And then, once you kind of came up with this, like what made you decide, like, this is the film I want to make? Like, I got this idea. I think it's really cool. I want to make this one. Why this instead of something else?
I think part of it too was our lead actress, Katie Harbridge, who is phenomenal. I could, much like the team I mentioned earlier, I could go on and on about how good of an actress and how nice of a person Katie is. And she did such a great job in the Demoniac movie and the Maker of Monsters that I thought, I really want to do something that will showcase Katie and her talents. And also, this is totally bizarre, but James Stevenson and I went out to Baltimore, Maryland, to shoot with George Stover for the Maker of Monsters. And George has a pretty big role in that film, and he's a genre icon.
Oh yeah.
For people who don't, I know you do, but a lot of people may not know for mainstream audiences who George Stover is. But he was there in the early days of the John Waters movies. He worked with Divine, and that whole experience out there was going to be a 2-day thing. And we spent 1 day on the Maker of Monsters. And I asked George before we went, I said, I would love to get sort of more out of this trip than these 4 scenes for the Maker of Monsters. Do you want to do a role in another film? And he said, what's the film? I'm like, I don't know. I don't know what that film is. I will come up with a script and we will figure it out. So I wrote the scenes of George Stover on the phone talking to the chief about something bad But if you really listen to George's dialogue in the movie, he doesn't mention anything specific. He
true.
just says like the evil, the bad thing. You know, I'm not sure how he doesn't call it the bad thing, but it was very vague. And at the time, it's like it could be a witch, it could be a slasher killer, it could be a Sasquatch, whatever it was, because I thought I could incorporate that into pretty much any movie with some bad guy doing some bad thing. And that's how that come about. So when I wrote the script for the movie, well, I just took Jeff Angel's lines and I contorted them to work with George's material. So the initial thing we shot was George Stover's material, and I wasn't even sure what movie it was going to be for, to be totally honest. And then come up with the Beansboro stuff and the skull, and then I'm like, okay, that's where to put that footage.
You would never think it. I mean, it matches fine, because the beginning of the first film begins with the woman tied up on like the table. You got the killer walking around the skull, and then he walks past like a male dead body, or dead body, and then it's so that you find out later on that these two people are related to George Stover's character.
Right. And see, and you picked up on it, and that's one of my biggest regrets with this movie is I started to make a newspaper article to do an insert shot showing, missing locals found dead. And it was going to have pictures of Martha Swan and Homer Abrams, the two actors. And honestly, I just got to a point with editing where I'm like, we don't need it. It doesn't matter. People will get it. And so you picked it up. So
right.
I guess it didn't need to be there, because people I've talked to have said like that they get that. So I guess that it made enough sense the way it was. So
well, it helps that it's the two murders and then we talk to him. Right. Like if there were 3 murders or 4 murders and then we talk to him, I might go, ooh, who's he talking about?
Oh, true.
Yeah, but since it's the 2 people before, and he does say like, it is 2 people. Right. I think he says family members. I figured, okay, that's who he's talking about. So, but I do have to ask.
Well, and I would love to bring him. I would put George Stover in every movie that I made. He's actually in 2 other of my films, and he has filmed his own material in Baltimore for me. So George and we're pretty good friends. We communicate a lot. But if I had my way with it, I'd be out in Baltimore twice a year shooting with George. But just when you work on such a low budget, and then of course with COVID for the past year or more, it's made things a little more nerve-wracking to travel and to be in bigger cities and things like that. So.
Yeah, I was trying to find. I disappeared off screen for a second because I thought I'd have a copy of the film I wanted to put on screen, but it must be someplace else. I noticed the last name of Walt, and I was curious about that because in The Devil Bat, starring Bela Lugosi, his last name is Carruthers, but spelt with 2 R's. Walt's last name, who's George Stover, is Walt Carruthers, but spelt with 1 R. Is there any parallel to that? Is there any like where you look like, oh, Devil Bat, I like that movie, I'll take the name, but just drop an R?
So sometimes I do, and that one I've seen The Devil Bat years ago, but I would never have been able to remember what Bela's character was named. But now
it's just pure coincidence.
A name I liked. So
yeah, and with George Stover's, he was such a nice guy. I've never actually met him, but even though like I have a short film in Brad Twigg's like Frames Affair 2, and he's the host. So like Aximus is in that. So I've been in films that he's worked on, but I've never met him personally. But I ordered his documentary, which I think is called like Can't Stop the Stover.
No Stopping the Stover.
No Stopping the Stover. And I put a picture of it up on Facebook. And I'm like, oh, I'm watching this now. He private messaged me and goes, forget that one. I'm going to send you the uncut version.
Yep.
And I'm like, uncut? What's missing? And he's like, oh, we couldn't get the rights to certain commercials or to music or whatever it is, so it had to be cut out. He's like, what's your address? And I'm like, oh my God. And there it was, like a week later was this DVD that he sent me. And I'm like, that is the nicest thing I think really anybody's done, you know, for me in a long time. It's just like, I don't even know him personally. And he's just like, yeah, don't watch that, watch this.
He told James and I that too. He said, don't, because I bought the Alpha one as well. And he said,
yeah,
don't watch that. They couldn't get the rights. And he was handing us postcards or lobby cards for things, and Blu-rays that were out of print and stuff. It was, you know, it was a cool experience. If you ever get to work with George personally, or you know, even to have him film something for one of your movies, you know, out in Baltimore. I mean, he's I know he's done that for Joe Sherlock before, but can't say enough good things about George Stover. So
yeah, I've never heard a bad word. So that's, you know, yeah, I would love to work with him. So that's, yeah, I didn't know if he actually shot his own stuff or not, or you know, even for your
I shot this. So,
yeah, so for your film you shot it, but he'll shoot his own stuff for other people then, like, is what you're saying, right?
Our first working experience was for Graveyard Stories 2, and he shot his own material for that. And that thing took so long to get done. In the time I was finishing Graveyard 2, we got out to Baltimore and shot for the maker of Monsters and Blood Cove. And both of them actually beat Graveyard Stories 2 to release. That's how long that one took to get done. And then George just recently wrapped on shooting some stuff for me for one I've got coming up called Flesh Eaters. It's totally finished. We just hit some bumps in the road with editing and some scheduling things here at the very end to get done. So, but you know, knock on wood, it will be done early next year. So,
and that's Flesh Eaters.
Yep.
Always a good title. That's The Flesh Eaters is one of my all-time favorite, like 50s B movies.
Oh yeah,
where they're stuck on the island, and yeah, it's got the beatnik who's he's like half a skeleton and stuff. It's such a great movie too. Great title. So you got a great title there. So
well, you know, because you have The Flesh Eaters, then you have the one that the guy from Night of the Living Dead.
Oh, yeah, Bill Hintzman. He did
Flesh Eater, and I'm like, do I do this? Do I call it? And there's part of me that says, you know what? There's no IMDb title for it yet. Maybe call it something else. I don't know, but I thought, well, it's what it is. It's about, you know, a monster who is a flesh eater, you know, so it works.
Well, there you go. No reason to change it or anything.
That's right. Don't change a good thing.
And so now after we, well, actually, let me ask. So because you brought up part 3, so I'll ask this question: were you always planning on like a franchise with these films, or what happened?
Not specifically. To be brutally honest about this topic, you know, nowadays I think in Hollywood, you know, everything's a franchise. Everything, you know, if it's going to make money, by God, it's gonna be a series. With me, I have wanted to do a series of something for a long time, and if you look back at the filmography, like we did a movie called A Whisper in the Dark in 2015, and then we did A Whisper in the Dark 2 the very next year. Those didn't get off the ground like I'd hoped they would in terms of quality. Viewership, though, part 1 has like 1.4 million views on YouTube by itself. Wow. So as far as the viewership and the revenue it's earned, one of our most successful movies, but it wasn't what I wanted in terms of quality. And then, of course, with Graveyard Stories, kind of the same thing, but making horror anthologies is a whole different animal. And you know that, you know, trying to do multiple stories and that's a lot. So I think, I wouldn't say this happened by accident, but it was almost like I wanted to do an ongoing storyline, and it sounds terrible. I wasn't super picky about what it even was. I just wanted something to continue and do multiple volumes of. And I was so happy with part one that I'm like, okay, maybe this is the one to do it with. Because I am a fan of ongoing series. I mean, you know, I love, if you look at my DVD shelves at home, a lot of them are, you know, you see the multiple parts of the franchise. It could be something like Friday the 13th, or it could be something like Witchcraft, where there's 16 of those things,
Right.
you know, and I'm like, yeah, the quality's all over the place, but damn it, they have a storyline. They're going to keep it going, you know, and I don't know, there's just something kind of fun about that. And I think with doing your own series, you can sort of control the quality a little bit more. Whereas when you do farm things out, it can be all over the place, depending on who's got a hold of it, you know, and sometimes you're like, all right, that's the guy or girl for the job. Other times it's like, whoa, why did they get that property to do anything? You know, so
Right.
I think that's with it being in-house, we can, whether they're good or bad is, you know, everybody can make that decision themselves, but like to think you could get some sort of consistency with quality. So that's,
well,
with all that said, though, there is something to say for different filmmakers tackling the same subject matter, you know, because there's series that I follow now, and it's like, oh, they've handed it off to so and so. I'm like, oh, cool, it'll be neat to see what they do with it, you know. Camp Blood is a great example of that, you know, with you know, it could be Mark Polonia, it could be Dennis Devine, could be you or I maybe someday, you know, it'd be neat to do something like that, but if it could be worked out. But you know, it's fun, I guess, to see different filmmakers take on the same subject. But I guess in summation, I just kind of wanted something to have an ongoing life, and I think that Blood Cove was a good contender for that. And I think so far we've upheld the quality for the most part, you know, through the first two. We have a couple other films. One is released, one is coming out around Halloween. And I think those are contenders also to have multiple volumes if they perform well and if people are interested. So
well, and the ending of each Blood Cove is you put a definite ending, but now you're going to part three. So are you satisfied with the way part one ended to like, okay, I don't need to make a part two. Oh, but it's popular, I'll make a part two. Now I got that definite ending. Oh, but now that's popular, now I'll make a part three.
That's a good question. No, and I'm sorry I got up on a tangent on the last question.
Please.
I was like
your interview.
7 miles.
As long as you want.
Well, I was like 7 miles from your question on that, but just my brain, you know, spins around 100 miles a minute. But I think with Blood Cove, we were all just so happy with how part one turned out that it was like, and we had this desire. I had the desire to make it a series or something, a series, and you know, Ben had the interest in coming back to be the character, and James and Darren were on board, and the lead actors, you know, who survived, you know, would be willing to come back for more films. And I think what I like about how we did part two, with the exception of the opening, it's really its own story. It's not super married to the first one, except for the opening scene. And I think that's what is good about these, that you can almost watch part two and you didn't have to see part one. And I hope part three can draw connection to one and two, but also kind of be its own piece.
Right.
Where you don't have to see all of them to, and I get tired of the whole, you know, oh, he's still alive. Well, of course he's still alive. It's a horror series.
Right.
You know, I mean, my God, you know, they never die, you know, so it's like, oh, we're going to really kill him good this time. It's like, well, hell, you know, I mean, you know, they cut off Michael Myers' head and brought him back, what, 3 more times since then. So,
yeah, and I think they came up with the best explanation they could. I don't think that they, as lame as some people want to say it is, I don't think they could have come up with anything different. I mean, it's just, unless they said it was all a dream.
Right. Yeah.
So
For sure. I mean,
that's the smart thing you're doing. You're not cutting off anybody's head, at least the killer's head.
well, I think that, in part 3, I have the script already done, that there's a way in which he comes back. To me, it's logical, in a horror movie sense. I mean, none of this can happen, at the end of part 2, the way he's killed off. That's pretty much it. I mean, I don't know how a regular person would come back from that, but it's a horror film. It kind of works on its own level. So,
well, compared to what happens to the skull at the ending of the first film and then what happens to him at the beginning of the second film, I would think he would pretty much just be done. He's out. So at the end of the second film, that's kind of tame in comparison to what happened to him earlier.
Well, and that's true with the burning. I guess that would be a little more definitive.
Yeah.
Well, and with part 1, I guess the ending of that, the Michael Rivers character beats on him pretty good. But you could live through that arguably. But I think after the opening of part 3, and you see exactly what the sort of makeup of this guy is, it's like, okay, we understand why he's surviving all of this. And this is, I was pretty proud of the opening because we've already shot the opening for part 3. Like I was telling you before the show started, and I'm pretty happy with that because to my knowledge, it's different than anything I've ever seen before in a slasher kind of movie. So I do think it's a pretty original idea, as original as you can get in these kind of movies. So.
Well, you try your best, and hopefully, yeah, you pull something off that nobody's ever seen, or at least you could do it in a different way.
Right. Well, we take it all the way back to 1960 something, 62. So we shot it in black and white. It wasn't done in post. It was shot in black and white. We shot it in an old house that was built in the 1800s. We had period costumes to make it look authentic. So I think that will add some production value too to that third movie. So
sure.
And our actress in that's phenomenal. Jordan Lee Wheatley, she really sold that scene and what was going on. So really proud of her performance in that. So
yeah, I'm looking forward to part 3. So, but now you had mentioned production value. So tell me about the haunt that's in the first film, or at least is that a haunt that the film centers around?
Those guys are amazing. That they are a local haunt team. There's three people, a married couple, and then one other guy that own it together. And it's called Frightmare's Haunted House. And they've been going, I think, for 11 years here in town. And sadly, this is their last year. I'm actually about 6 blocks from that building. And, and on the sign as you go by, it says it's their final year. And they messaged me a while back and they said, hey man, if you want to shoot anything else up here, you better get up here and do it quick. So I'm not sure what we could get done before they closed up shop, but they were very generous initially about, hey, come up and do what you want. If you ever want to use it, let us know. And then that turned into, just a really great friendship with those guys. And they just gave me a key and they said, hey, just let us know when you go up there, just go do your thing. And that's how they operate, very generous with their building. And each of them are in, well, the two of them, the two guys, they're in Blood Cove too. They're two of the cops, the cop in the blue shirt with the ball cap, and then of course they're both in the opening scene too, and then the one that gets the pitchfork through the stomach. Okay. Those are two of the guys that own the haunt, and they're good buddies with us too. So it's and I thought, well, we've got access to that haunted house. Write a script that would involve a haunted house, because what better place to harbor a slasher killer than the basement of a abandoned haunt, So
Is it meant to be a haunt in the film, or is it just like an abandoned building or something?
it's meant to be an old and that's why, the Blood Cove Haunted House, established 1978. I painted that sign in my backyard. I had all the neighbor kids staring at me, Mr. Mair, because I was, school teacher, and they're Mr. Mair, what are you doing? What are you making? What's Blood Cove? And I'm like, you'll find out, So,
Yeah.
but and then of course I burnt that sign for part two, but which
You
is
did,
unfortunate.
yes.
Yeah, now I wish I had the thing back. Because for part three, we're going to go back and show some more things, and I have to make the sign again. So, and at least try to make it look like the first one. But no, yeah, they're a true haunted house, and all very grassroots and locally based. And I'm sad to see it go, but I understand. Sometimes you just have to move on from things. So,
Yeah, because I was trying to, even on my second viewing, I was really looking at it like, God, this place looks so good. Is this an active, haunt, or is it like an abandoned one that they found? And I couldn't figure it out, because it's a great place to shoot. But then I figured, okay, well, it has power, so it must, they must still be using it. But the colors and everything inside are awesome. All those kind of like illuminating, like purples and blacks and reds and greens that are all over the walls, including the skull's mask has those types of colors on them. Just look amazing. I mean, they look great.
Yeah, that it's a good place to shoot. The only pitfall about that building, of course, it's not air conditioned or cooled. And we've used it for practically every movie we've done since we've had access to it in different ways. Because there's a cave setting in there. We use that in Fangs for Maker of Monsters. It's the stairwell, and a couple other rooms in that. And my God, it can get hot in there. Or you're either sweating bullets or you see your breath the whole time. So, and of course, in the first Blood Cove, in the end of the movie, when they're out in the rain in the woods, you can see their breath, because it was genuinely cold those days we were filming. So, all of none of that's put in. That was all, and then when we did part two, it was hotter than blue blazes, so it just depends on the time. But it very neat location, and very nice of them to let us use it as often as we have. So
yeah, you got some good angles and stuff in there. You got, you constantly have the skull in the background of things, which is nice. One of the things that I did like, and I made a note of it, is the woman is strapped to the table at the beginning, and he's kind of taunting her, and then he walks away and he's at a door, and he's just kind of sitting there breathing, and then he's like, fuck it, and then just turns around and just starts going at it.
Yeah.
And I really like that moment, because those are the little moments that you don't see in a lot of films. Is like, what is he thinking? What is he doing? Is he going to kill her? Is he not going to kill it? And then in his brain, it's just boom, fuck it, I'm just going to go kill her.
Yeah, that's attributed to Ben. Ben suggests those things as the character, and James and Darren will throw things in too, where they'll have little ideas for nuance, of that character or other characters and things. But yeah, I think Ben does a damn good job in that part and that little moment. Yeah, I like that too. And I debated, do you show the whole body, the whole profile of the killer in the first scene, or should I hold off on it? And I'm like, you know what? We've been through this before, where it takes, 3/4 of the film. And it's like, all right, let's just do it. Let's just show him in scene, because really you get him in scene one, and then you get him a little bit in the middle with the Joni Craven character getting captured. And then he's just at the very end. And that's it. That's the only time in the first film that you see him. Now in part two, he's there a lot.
Yeah. Well,
Ben almost argued in part two, you see him a little too much, which is why in three, upon Ben's suggestion, we're scaling the skull back a little bit as far as how much you see him to get a little bit more of that intrigue, like there was in part one. Because we both talked, we don't want to get into the Hellraiser thing where, you know, Pinhead, a little bit in part one, a little bit more in two. By 3 and 4, it's just constant. And although Doug Bradley's amazing, it's almost too much to where Pinhead's not as scary anymore because he's just there all the time. And I think that's, you know, I think in part 2, we got treacherously close to maybe a little too much Skull.
I would not. No, I disagree with that, to be honest, because and I've brought this up before, is I consider it's the Jaws 2 idea. Is the director of Jaws 2 said, we're not going to hide the shark. We know it's a shark.
Okay.
Why would we hide the shark? So from the very beginning of Jaws 2, when the 2 divers get attacked at the orca, we know it's a shark. The photos that Brody finds, we know it's a shark. The shark that kills the water skier, it's a shark. So where Spielberg, of course, had problems with the shark and you know, which weren't, otherwise we would have seen more of the shark.
Sure.
Kind of Blood Cove has him more as the shark from Jaws. Well, I think part 2 of Blood Cove is more like Jaws 2.
Okay.
We see
maybe we did the right thing then by having.
I think so, because you shoot a lot of stuff during the day, and which I love. I love horror films that take place during the day. I think it's much scarier than at night, because you're seeing it come right at you. And no, I think that you did. Yeah, I think you chose wisely with that would be.
Oh, good. Well, and you know, we've got a lot of positive feedback for both of them, but I'm not heard anybody say anything negative about too much Skull. So maybe, who knows, maybe in 3 we ought to show him even more. So show him having
I would say at
tea
least
or
as
something.
equally. Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's you know, we never got tired of Leatherface. So, you know, we want to see Leatherface.
Well, true. Yeah. Well, I think maybe it's a thing where, you know, if you like more of the subtlety, maybe part 1's more your cup of tea. If you like, you know, if you like to see the killer more and being more active, part 2 may be more your, and that's good. And we all have different tastes, you know, and in what we like, and that's what's good, you know, about film people or any people. It's just that, you know, everybody has ideas of what they like, and if you put enough out there, you may have enough for everybody to find something they enjoy.
Oh, sure. Well, and one thing I also look at always in films are credits, and I really like how you do the credits in both films. I like the you know the well, they look very similar to what you have on the box, so I like that a lot. And then it kind of expands and oozes down just a little bit. So I thought you guys did a good job with that. And in the first one, there's an axe that's right next to it. There we go. There's like an axe that's sitting there that's dripping blood. So I think your credits, I think, are very important in films too. And so you guys did a good job.
You want to know a little? Well, thank you. And if you want to know a little secret about me, making credits is probably my favorite part of the whole process.
Oh, wow. Okay.
When I as dorky as that sounds, and this is total, I will pull up a Word document and I will just type out the credits over and over just to see the order of the names and how it flows. And when I was a kid, I had one of those, like the teacher projectors with the little transparent sheets that you would write on and project it on the wall.
Oh, yeah.
And my mom got that for me from a thrift shop or something. And I would sit for hours with the movies I made as a kid, and I would put, you know, starring, you know, whoever, one of my friends, and then it would put it, and then would film it off the wall. And I would spend more time making the credits and filming off the wall than I would making the movies. You know, we'd make the movie in 2 hours. I would spend evening after school making these damn credits. And something about it, I just always, you know, I always like doing credit sequences. And of course, and you probably caught this, the Blood Cove 2 credits sequence is kind of a tribute to Halloween 4 with the the landscape shots.
Oh, I put that's in my notes.
And the fields and the
yeah. I said this has a very
okay,
Halloween 4 vibe to it. Yeah. Which I liked. So, but we'll get more into that.
Sorry.
Yeah, it's funny is because even for, because I'm right on the same page with you, is even for like the one filmmaker little promo things that I put up on Facebook where it says, this week's guest, and it has the picture of the person in the poster. Just me finding that right font for their name, is it slick? Is it bloody? Is it sci-fi looking? Like, could I find something that kind of matches the film that they made? And I'll spend like a good 30 minutes, an hour just going through fonts to find what I think matches that person's name. And even for like the last person who I interviewed, who's Miranda Dudley, who was my friend and makeup artist, I found one that I thought matched her personality because she likes like Slipknot and she likes these other bands. I'm like, what looks metal? What looks kind of, and I found something and I'm like, oh, there it is. So that stuff's important. It doesn't matter what it is, if it's a name or a title. Font is very important. Credits, titles are very important on how they look.
I agree.
Woody Allen is the only one who can get away with the black with the white credits because that's what he always does. Anybody else does it is boring. Boring.
Well, it's a way to pad your runtime, I guess.
Yeah. Well, I mean, look at John Carpenter. It's always the same font. John Carpenter's whatever is always the same because we'll know that name. We'll know whose film it is. Just by seeing that credit, and I don't mean that because it says John Carpenter's The Thing or something.
Sure, it's the style, what it is. Yep.
Yeah, exactly. So, and of course, one of the other things I look at in films is music. I really enjoyed the music in both films. I thought that that was very well done, and that was done by the same person.
I was going to make a point to mention him for sure. Virgil Franklin is a good friend of mine. And I actually grew up with his son and met him through knowing his son in elementary and middle and high school. And I remember because Virgil had done things for some indie films and PBS and whatnot. And I remember being nervous as hell the first time because I hadn't met him to be like, hey, what do you think about working on our movies? And he was like, dude, I would love to work on your movies. And I was throwing in this stuff in high school that was not worthy of how good of a composer he is. The movies were not worth a damn, but by God, the scores were good, and we're very, very lucky to have got in touch with Virgil, and he has stuck with me through every movie. There's only one film that has not been scored by him, and that was actually scored by his son and his band at the time, which was Weaver's Crossing. But sometimes Virgil does, front to back score for me. Other times he just composes themes, and then I will use music that he has loaned to me, and I actually piece it in. So that's actually what happened with the Blood Cove. Is he come up with the original theme song that you hear at the opening of part 1 and then the ending of part 2. And then the notes or the donuts he calls them that you hear when you see the skull, like that little that kind of goes up, and I'm not sure how to explain. You know what I'm talking about,
right? Oh yeah.
He did those types of things for the Blood Cove shows, and it all just kind of depends on what we need at the time. I spend a lot of time with his music, and I edit to his music a lot of times. So I like the ability to do it backward. I like to score with the music instead of score or edit to nothing and then have him work. And it's always sort of a friendly back and forth between us because he's like, just give me a movie with silence, damn it, and I'll score it. And I'm like, no, I have to score. He goes, score it with the music, drop the music, and then give me the movie. And I'm like, no, but it's perfect the way it is. So, but it's all his music, it's all Virgil's stuff. But very, very lucky to be involved with Virgil. And he is doing the full score for Flesh Eaters that's coming out soon. Cool. That one he twisted my arm and he said, "I want the whole movie. Don't score it with music." So, but anyway, but yeah, he did the original theme song for the Skull, and maybe for part 3 we'll have him do the whole film from start to finish. But either way, great scores in both movies. He does a very good job. So,
have you thought of releasing like a CD or anything like that for the soundtracks for any of these that he's done?
With Fangs, I highly considered that, because that opening theme he did for Fangs, the vampire movie that come out last year, that's my favorite piece of music he's ever written for us. So that one I did actually just on YouTube release just the title track, but I don't know, maybe that's something we ought to look into with him. I'm sure he would be up for it. And Virgil scores for the Sci-Fi Channel. He does a lot of stuff with PBS, and then he teaches music at a college nearby. So he's kind of got his hand in everything, and does a lot of indie scores. Especially in Indiana and the Midwest, he does a lot for this area. It's pretty common to be watching an indie movie made from this area and see music by Virgil Franklin, because he's got a lot of connections around here. So anyway,
is he set up on Bandcamp?
I think so. To be honest, my knowledge of some of these things outside of what I do sometimes is kind of scarce, but I think so, John. I'm not.
I'll check, and then if he has something on Bandcamp, I'll add a link to it. So because his music is really good, I enjoyed it quite a bit. So I was it's a CD I would pick up, like if there was Blood Cove 1 and 2 physical CD and it had pictures on it and all that type of stuff, track listing.
Okay.
I definitely.
Well, good. Well, thank you. I will talk to Virgil about it, because we're going to be in close contact here soon with the Flesh Eaters score. So I'll bring that up to him and see, maybe we can put some kind of compilation together for that, and maybe for Fangs, and yeah, I like that.
Yeah, I think it'd be kind of fun to have. So, some things I notice are I always notice little things. So I always try to find small little things in movies, and one of the things that I noticed is like Joni, she gets a card at the beginning of the film when she's at work, like, "Hey, we want you to come on full time." And it's a card that has ties on it. And I noticed, I thought somebody looked for that card. Somebody picked that card out, because it's like a business card. It has ties. It's like a nice card. It isn't just flowers. It isn't just like a sunrise or something. It's somebody picked out that card for that scene because they knew it was a business scene. It was like, welcome on board. Well, do you look at that type of stuff?
My wife actually, I think Ashley, my wife, picked that out. I may be wrong. Darren could probably tell you. Darren Morgan, my God, he remembers everything. I'll be like, I have no idea when we shot that. And he'll say, we shot that right around June of 2017. And I'm like, I couldn't tell you what I did last week. So, but he's got a really good memory, so he may know. But truthfully, I don't remember. I didn't pick it out, or if I did, I don't remember having a thought process. So my gut tells me my wife picked that out.
Well, she did a good job, because it matched. Where I think most people would just buy any card. It's just it actually matched that scene, and I appreciated it, because it showed that an effort was made.
Well, good. Well, I will tell her, because I truthfully don't remember the card at all. I mean, I remember in the film I see it, but I guess I've never put that together. But isn't that neat how, different people read into things? I know, with like 2001: A Space Odyssey, there's been books written about what all that can mean, and then Stanley Kubrick was just like, yeah, I just did that. I don't really know. I just kind of did it, like a lot of it he had, but certain little things, it was like, I don't know. It was an idea. There it was. But, but you thought something more about that card. So, maybe Ashley did too, so.
Right. I hope so.
I will ask, and I'll send you a message. I'm curious now. So.
Another I did like there. I mean, there's a whole bunch of shots in this that I like. There's the suitcase closing when she's packing at the beginning, and the zipper goes across it as she's packing, and then that cuts to her at the gas, like putting the gas in the car.
Mhm.
Thought that was nicely done.
Thank you.
And the funny thing is, I was thinking while watching this as she's driving, and she goes, we find out that she's a writer and all this, and she's going to get away from things because she's all stressed. And I'm like, oh my God, please don't let her get raped. You know, please don't let this end up being I spit on your grave. I'm like, please,
not in one of my films. No, I'm not. That's not something I'm gonna tackle. So
good. Yeah, I was glad to see it, because when she was at that gas station, I'm like, okay, where are the three guys going to come up and start harassing her, you know, and then follow her to her place, and you know, they'll get murdered too. They'll get what they're, but then it's like, oh, good. It's nice and refreshing that it wasn't even going in that direction. They just saw writer.
Well, I mean, obviously
cabin,
later on, well, I mean, of course, you find out that, you know, there was maybe some type of assault. If it come off as more than I guess when later on when her dad tells the cop about that she was sexually assaulted, I didn't want it to come off as if it was a full assault like that. Just something that was not good, you know, but not that full thing. I hope that come across.
Yeah. We get that something happened, but we're not, you know, we're not learning everything. So that's, which is fun.
Right.
It's enough information.
Well, and you know, the thing about that backstory too is that I guess because she's only in the film for like 20-25 minutes, I thought it might give the character just a little more depth, that something happened, and then you're like, we're not real sure why she's in therapy, just, you know, but then later on Darren's character kind of, you know, divulges that information to the cop, when in the first half you're like, okay, we're not really sure what happened to her, and then you just hear it later on, which, you know, that's sometimes that's how life is. You know, you may not know, and then somebody else just blipped something out. You're like, okay, that's what it was. You know, that's what happened. But anyway, so.
Yeah, and then you play the drunk.
Not very well. I'm not super proud of that role. We shot that. Well, I'll be honest, I don't drink, so I'm not real accustomed to knowing what that feels like. I've never been very interested in alcohol, I guess. So I mean, you know, I don't know. I just haven't developed a taste for it, I guess. But, you know, I wasn't sure what exactly to do. And I kind of kicked myself in the ass for playing that role, because I like to act, and I'm in quite a few of my films, and I would like to be a character in one of these movies. And now I'm like, well, crap, I've already been the drunk. I guess that counts me out of showing up in Blood Cove 5, you know, as somebody else. But that's okay.
You just shave the beard.
That's right. I need to shave the beard anyway.
Shave the beard, get the hair done, and you're a completely different character. I am in the same movie twice as two different characters. I'm actually a homeless person in it, and then I play a cameraman in Joe Lujan's Rust 3. And he's like, no, if you're the cameraman, you can't be the homeless guy. And it's like, no, I had this bushy beard, and now I don't have the beard. It's like, but I'm wearing a baseball cap. I'm a different person. So he's like, yeah.
Oh,
okay,
cool.
Yeah.
And what's that movie?
Rust 3.
It
takes place in a haunt. He filmed it in a haunt out here. Yeah.
Okay. Now I'm assuming, this is a stupid question, that there's a Rust and a Rust 2.
Yeah, they were released from Wild Eye Releasing, but I do not recommend them. And I mentioned this to Joe. They're way too dark. I don't know why they chose to release them this way, but he has his own copies that he gives out to people. So it's
the transfer itself is too dark.
Just black. I mean, I bought it and I went, what is wrong with this? But it's he has his own haunt like slasher series, and cool. we're actually going to be making Aximus meets Rust, where Drew Marvick. Well, I don't know if it will be Drew yet, but it will be one of the Killer Santas meets his killer Travis. So it's yeah. So, but
Cool.
enough
Very
about
cool.
my
Well,
stuff.
the Aximus shows that those are, well, no, those are great. Now,
Thank
I
you.
like that because, well, it was Aximus. The first one showed up in was Frames of Fear 2, and that became Brutality, right?
Right.
Okay, yeah, that was. I'm not sure why the title changed, but anyway, it was really cool to have
It's
that.
what Wild Eye Releasing does. They change titles for no reason.
Okay, I didn't know. I wasn't sure.
Yeah.
I knew George Stover had mentioned that to me. He said, look it up, but it's called Brutality now, and he just put kind of like a, I don't know, face on his message. I'm like, I don't know either, but.
Yeah, it's, if you remember back in the day, this is primarily, I want to say, like the late 80s, early 90s, these cheapy companies like Genesis, as some of them, they would take movies like old films like The Wizard of Mars with John Carradine, and they would retitle them like Journey to the Center of the Madness Planet, and it would start with the credits, and they would just go to this really bad card that would give the new title, and then it would go back to the movie again. That's what Brutality felt like. Is like, oh god, that doesn't look like it belongs there. That title,
like they didn't. Yeah, they didn't even try to.
Yeah.
Well, then you have things like After Death, which come out as Zombie 4 in America, and Killing Birds come out as Zombie 5, and they didn't even bother to put the title on the screen. It just comes up and says After Death, and I'm like, you didn't even bother to go in and type Zombie 4 over top. I don't get it. Yeah, I guess it's all about the money. It's all about what they think they can sell.
Yeah, it's true. Yeah, very true. So, but now back to your film. Those movies don't even matter. Back to yours. How many days would you say was the shoot for the first Blood Cove?
Including the Baltimore material, if you count that as one of the day, we probably had like maybe 8 or 9 days. That's about average.
Okay.
For one of these films, and sometimes you'll have a pickup shoot that may be 2 or 3 hours. I know with Blood Cove we had one long day.
Yeah, part 2 also. Oh no, go ahead. I was going to say, I'll ask the next couple questions if you want to do them as parts 1 and 2. So that's fine. So we'll still stick with how many days shoot was for part 1, and then how many days for part 2.
Okay, I would say part 1 probably 8 or 9 days. Part 2 took a little longer. It's a little more extensive. There's more locations. In part 2, there's a lot more actors in part 2. So I would say part 1, we had some longer days. We had the long day with Katie Harbridge. We had the long day with Jeff Angel, who plays Detective Fontana, and then Michael Rivers, Darren Morgan's character. That would be one long day. And then we had one long day with the cops, the trio of cops. And then we had some overlap. So I would say probably it may have been less than 8 or 9, John. It may have been more like three long days, 3 partial days. It may have been something like that. But I know part 2 took quite a bit longer in terms of days because it's a lot more broad with the characters. You had people on the street, you had the mayor, you had the cops, you had people at their houses, you had victims who were in their houses and out on the street there too. And so part 2 took a little longer just in terms of the amount of shoot days. So. And
what was the budget on each one?
Budget. No. My God, what does that even mean? No. Darren always jokes that we shoot on a dental floss budget. People will say they have a shoestring budget. Moonlight Films has a dental floss budget. Honestly, Joe, I don't normally get into too much of the budget on these things, but I mean, to be totally honest, we run about $1,500 on each film. That's pretty accurate. Okay. None of it is, we don't do any Kickstarters or anything like that. We did one time for for Graveyard Stories. And to be honest, that was more trouble than what it was worth at the time. Just with the perks and trying to remember who did what, and trying to do all the jobs that I do on these things, that got to be too much to remember. So after that, I'm like, no more crowdfunding. It works for some people. It didn't really work great for us, but about 1,500 a piece on these movies,
Okay.
and all of that is self-funded through our YouTube revenue, and then the DVD sales, and then the premieres that we have here. But that's pretty close. And sometimes we'll dip under that. We'll go, okay, we're kind of in a lull. We got to go a little cheaper. Or other times, like with Graveyard Stories and The Maker of Monsters, it ends up being a little more because you have to travel. Or the big thing is nobody's really paid. That's just a common thing with our stuff. No, we use that money to reimburse gas money, food expenses. Everybody gets, if they're there all day, you get your lunch, dinner, and snacks and breaks and things like that. If you drive, an hour, 2 hours, 4 hours to get to location, we reimburse all that. If you have to stay in a hotel, we pay for those types of things. So people don't get paid, but the whole idea is, except for your time, you're not out anything financially. And I feel good about it because people keep coming back, and our team is getting bigger and bigger and bigger, to where we have people all the way from, we're in southern Indiana, but we have people who've driven up from Nashville, Tennessee. We've been out to Baltimore. We had a guy fly in from California one time on his own dime because he wanted to be in the movie. And I'm like, dude, we cannot pay to get you here. And he's like, I will be there. And he was here, and was here for the whole weekend. We paid for his hotel, but he did the whole thing himself. He wanted to be part of it. And it's like, hey, so I think that's a lot of it, is although the budgets aren't big, it's how you treat people. And if you're good to your cast and you're good to your crew, and you all have a passion to make something and to do the best job you can, it doesn't have to cost a fortune to make something like this. Because I think it's like, just try harder with your camera setups, or with your scripting, or whatever it is. Put as much effort as you can into it, because that will show up on the screen, even if you don't have a lot of money. So there's no sense in pretending, what the budgets are. There's no reason to fabricate some number. Oh, this cost $20,000. No, it didn't. It all really is birthed out of the love of what we do. So, and having a really good team to do it with. So James and I, like I said, James Stevenson and I own the company together. We both really believe that, you treat people the best you can. And it really does become kind of a big family. Moonlight Films really, except for people who've moved away, I don't think we've ever had somebody say, I'm not going to come back. They've all come back, so anyway.
Oh, that's great. That's great. Yeah. Cause it's the way that I look at it is very similar to you. Is I always think Scream. And that's the film that, even though we knew who Courtney Cox was, we knew who, a lot of these people already were, that's the film that really launched. We knew who Wes Craven was, obviously, but it seriously launched everybody. Courtney Cox had friends.
Yeah.
Nev Campbell didn't really have much. Wes Craven had Freddy already, but it was Scream made Wes Craven the master. Like, I don't think that he was taken totally seriously before you made Scream. So I think actors and crew and all that want Scream. So they're hoping, okay, they're going to take care of me. I'm not getting paid, but they're going to take care of me. And I'm hoping that Blood Cove is the next Scream, that somebody is going to see this and this movie is going to just boom. And then they could get paid on everything. So as long as you're treated well,
Well, and that's always, because I don't make any personal money either. Every dime we make goes. That's the thing. It's like, you do it because you love it. And I think that we're just very lucky to have a lot of people with James and Darren and and Ben and the rest of the cast and crew, Tara Bixler, and who's very involved in the films, that we all love what we do. And I think that and everybody has a day job. You know, everybody has a job that they do, you know, as a full-time gig. This is not a full-time gig for people. We all wish it could be, but so I think if you don't love it, you're not going to put the time into it, because it takes an incredible amount of time to pull something like this off, and the days are long. And if you're from 4 hours away, I can't keep expecting you to come back over and over with
Right.
no money and no. So if you don't love it, then, you know, then what are you doing, I guess. So we're just very lucky in that department. So
Yeah. No, that's great. That it's wonderful when you can develop those types of relationships with people. And I tell them the same thing. I don't make a dime off of anything that I've made. And when I made up the DVDs for Meat Hook Massacre 4, I got some crap for that, you know, and it was like, I haven't made a dime. And they're like, well, you got to be making something. It's like, no, I'm literally not making any money. I'm spending like $200 on all these DVDs. I put the time in to make them. I spent the time, you know, to buy the bags and to print everybody's address and went to the post office. I'm like, they spent $5 for this. Oh, then you did make money. No, I didn't make any money. The bag cost money, posting cost money, and they paid for a signed poster. The poster was like $3, and it was signed by me and some of the cast and crew. Nobody paid a dime for that movie. And it's like, oh, well, okay. And it's like, no, when a lot of these other people say, we don't make any money off of this. We don't. We're putting money in.
Sure. Well, and I know what that's like to send the DVD, because I mean, of course, our cast and crew, they each, you know, everybody gets the DVD for free or whatever, and then they get into the premiere for free, because, you know, that's just like a little thank you.
Right.
Putting all the time in. To me, it's like, if you put all this time in to help us bring the movie to life, you know, you should get a physical copy of the film. You know, and sometimes Exactly. It takes a while, because it is expensive. Even if you make your own stuff, by the time you buy the packing material and you get it shipped to people out in wherever they are in the world, it does that. Just that alone is a costly thing. So,
oh yeah,
you know, that's why the YouTube revenue is so important. And people have knocked us before. Why do you give your movies away for free? We don't. We make money on YouTube, and there are times this time of year during Halloween, we make decent money off YouTube revenue. Then we hit early summer and we don't make very much at all, you know, but when you start getting 10, 12, 13 full movies on YouTube, they do start to accumulate, but all that money goes right back into the creation of more films, or to get the DVDs out to people, you know, and to show it at a theater to where they can come and sort of celebrate the release of the thing, you know. And with COVID, that messed all that up. But James and I are pretty proud of these premieres that we get to have around here, where people can come and celebrate the movie being done and watch it on a big screen, you know. So anyway.
Yeah, and for me, I know Kanaki has just been an absolute miracle. I wouldn't have been able to get those Meat Hook 4 DVDs out to cast and crew, out to the crowdfunding people, and out to just some random people who wanted a copy. I mean, I made 70 and I had 10 that I could, you know, mail to people who just wanted, like, collectors.
Sure.
And so thanks to Kanaki, I mean, it's just like, oh my God, I was able to get this all done. So there's ways of doing it, and they're fairly inexpensive if you're the person who made the movie. You know, you're not spending $20. But it's, I think, everybody who should get a copy of the movie if they worked on it, especially if they did it for free. So that's,
well, and I know a lot of the guys that we all do the micro budget stuff. It's getting more and more common to, hey, go see my Kanaki store, because, like you said, it is pretty easy. It's an easy process to get it made, and when the you know, you can buy 20 units or whatever, and they're $1.86 a piece.
Right.
That's about the best you're going to get. I know we had stuff on Amazon for a long time, and I pulled everything because it got so darn expensive to, it got to where it was with Graveyard Stories. I said, we can't do this anymore. We're spending $7, $8, $10 a copy on every movie for every cast member. And when you get 25 cast members and you've got $10 a pop, that's $250 just to buy the cast DVDs, not to mention to ship the things out.
Right.
So anyway, it's just, that's why Amazon had to go by the wayside. So
no, I understand that perfectly. So okay, so back to the film. We'll ask so there's see, I could talk about this type of stuff all day and we won't even get to the questions. Gotta stop again, gotta just stop right there. And okay, back to this. Another shot, because I'm just kind of going off the how I wrote the notes here. Another shot that I really liked in the first film is Joni is standing in front of a sheet at the haunt, and you could see behind her the skull come up, and he's like on the other side of the sheet. See, these things I think you did a great job on. I mean, it looked so good with him walking back there and with that mask.
Oh, thank you.
It's like you totally see it, and I actually rewound it and went, ooh, that was really cool. How did you light the haunt?
The lighting in the basement, they have like a 3D sort of a deal. So it's pretty dark, and they've got some lights, but when the patrons go through, you have the 3D glasses and all that paint on the wall, the sort of neon colors, those all like really pop, and it looks super cool. It's very cramped in that haunt because you're in little hallways and things. So it was pretty much all lit with can lights because we could not get our stage lights down there in the haunt. There really is only a couple rooms in the whole place that are big enough for those stage lights. So it was all can light. Of course, a couple red in the room with the table and the chains and all that. And then of course some green in the background. And some of that's inspired by, the love for Italian horror with all their gel collars, the giallo sort of stuff. And so I kind of like that in our films where we light with some of those sort of extreme colors in the horror scenes. And it's not realistic, but that's okay. It
doesn't need to be.
It adds a mood to it. So
Sure. And what about the raining near the end? Was that real rain? Were you expecting rain?
That was real rain, and it was cold. Like I said, you could see our breath. And that, honestly, that is a testament to our cast and crew, because that was a day where we could have really easily said, okay, forget it, we're going to go home. It's cold, it's pouring down rain. On film, except for the part at the bridge, you can't really tell how hard it's raining because rain doesn't always pick up well on camera. You know that. It could be raining really hard, and you're like, why is it not showing up?
Yeah.
But it was raining really pretty good, and like I said, it was very cool out. And I got to a point where I'm like, I just stopped the cast, and I'm like, do we want to keep going? Or at this point, when the characters pull in to the gravel lot there where Joni's truck is, it's like we can either stop, come back a different day, or we can just keep going. And you guys were just going to keep going to the end as planned, because the rain, just with it being in the early spring, that happens around here. I mean, you just get a rain shower, and it rained pretty much the rest of the day. And they all were like, no, let's do it. It'll add to the movie. And I'm no, I think so too. But I don't want to keep you guys out here when it's this cold, and pouring down rain. And the unfortunate thing is too, those cop uniforms, all the patches I had glued on with a fabric glue, and the patches were falling off because of the rain. So Tara Bixler, God love her, she's stitching the patches back on in the rain while filming in the woods, and the camera is flashing at me saying, error, camera getting wet, error. And I'm like, oh my God, the costumes are falling apart, the camera's falling apart. But it was sort of like everybody was on board that no, this is going to make the ending look cool if we do this in the pouring down rain. So we get that done. I had to put my camera in rice for a week, which scared me to death because the camera wasn't real cheap. And I about had a heart attack with the camera issue. But later on, when we went to, because we shot that first, and then we circled back and got the material with Detective Fontana and Michael Rivers. So the rain on them, where they're standing there and they're like, that's the haunted house, and Michael's smoking, and Jeff's got his cowboy hat on. That rain is a sprinkler that starts to hit them. And then when they open the door and they're standing there with a flashlight, which is a great shot, and they're looking around, that's a hose and rain and fake rain pouring down on them from behind, because we had to make it look like the stuff we'd shot a couple weeks prior.
Right.
So the rain they got was on a much warmer day, and it was just a hose. To make it look that way. They're like, do we have to? Yes, we have to do it because it won't match, But they were troopers too about getting wet. But I think that whole last 15 minutes is probably the best part of the movie, because I think the shot of Eddie Fish on the bridge dead, and he's a great character actor in our group, and he's laying there bleeding, and the skull's got the knife, and the rain's just pouring down on him. That's probably my favorite shot in the movie, because it just looks, kind of epic, and it was an accident that it happened, so.
Well, and that's what you had around you helped that, because the uniforms were wet. You could see the rain hitting the car windows. You had the rain when they were in the haunt, just kind of walking around with, aiming their guns. Rain was dripping from different areas in the haunt. Right. So the rain that you couldn't see, you knew rain was there because it was all dripping. Windows were getting wet, their hair was dripping wet, their face was dripping wet. So I thought it was very effective. And that's one of my notes was this real rain or fake? Because it looked great. It added
not 90% of it was real. So
yeah, you would never know the fake from the real. So because it matched very well. So
well, good. Well, I know Eddie Fish, the actor who played the cop that eats the donuts. I love working with Eddie. He's a lot of fun, and that day he goes, I want to roll off this bridge, man, into that water. And I'm like, Eddie, I don't know what that water has in it. Is it big rocks? Is it, I don't know. Is it spikes? I have no idea what that is. Like, I wouldn't roll off in it. I'm going to roll off into that, man. I'm like, Eddie, I don't think you should roll off that bridge. Like, I don't want you hurt. Not to mention, we're out here in the middle of nowhere. It's pouring down rain. We're kind of running out of time. With the day was getting longer, the uniforms are falling. I said, don't fall off in the water. And ever since then, every time I talk to him, he's like, man, you should have let me fall off in that water. Like, well, maybe I should have, but I didn't want him to get hurt, so.
Right.
But he's a trooper, so.
Well, and I have to say my favorite cop is Bella. So, that is a cop that I would like to be arrested by.
I tell you what, Tara is our longest running actress and a very, very dear friend of mine. And she has been in pretty much every movie that we've ever made. And just a hell of a lot of fun and so much help. She's a chameleon. You look at her in Blood Cove, and then you look at her in Fangs, and she looks like a totally different person. It's incredible, just her look and her style and everything about her changes all the time. Huh. But it's neat because it gives her a totally different feel in each movie. But she's terrific. Very, very lucky to have her involved in all these too. But and of course, she was the chief voice in No, let's stay in the rain and film it, because that's just her personality.
Awesome.
Let's get it. Let's get it done. No matter how long it takes. And You know, she'll put in a 16-hour day with us and still do all the blood and stuff at the very end of it, you know, because we saved it to the end because of cleanup, and she's still just as involved as she was at 8 in the morning, you know, after being there, you know, for tons and tons of hours. So just a great actress all around. So
Yeah, I really liked her character, and I was sad when I saw that she got a spear in the head.
well,
Oh no!
we debated on and kind of joked about it. Maybe in Blood Cove 2, have her play a sister who's pissed off about her twin, the cop, getting killed. And I'm like, well, that may come up later, you know, in Blood Cove. It can't be 3 because of the way the story works. But if we were to move it on, I wouldn't be opposed to bringing her back and be like, you know, that skull killed my twin sister. You know, I mean, it's just a way to get her back in the movie. So
well, it's funny because we all do the twin thing, because I have for Axmas 3. Mikey, who is in the first film, and he actually gets a spear through him in the first film. Right. He's like, I want to come back in the sequel. I'm like, dude, you died in the first movie. And he's like, what if I'm a twin? And I'm like, what if you are a twin? So now he's he's in Axmas 3 he's the twin who comes back to, you know, to try to, you know, he doesn't like Ashley's character, you know, in it, because he feels that she got him killed. But it's it's funny, we all do the twin thing. So it's and it's a good way to bring somebody back you want to work with.
Now do you have a release date for part 3 yet?
No, because we're going to do 3 and 4 back to back. They may not even be shot this year. I'm not sure. We normally shoot somewhere in like February. I was hoping to do it this year, but it's just, you know, COVID is so weird that it's now with the variant and all that. I just want to be really careful with stuff.
Sure.
So, but we'll see. You know, they'll get done. They will get done, but it just may be later than what I was hoping. So.
We need more Axmas. You got to keep it going.
Thank you. Well, and then after part 4, I do hand it over to other people. So part 5 will be directed by somebody else. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, I envy you for letting your property move. Because I've always thought about, like, can I do that? I don't know. Like I said earlier, you know, what's that?
You never know who might want to direct an Axmas movie. So, you know, it could be you. You know, it could be.
Hey, you know, hit me up. I think that would be interesting to tackle some other subject matter. It's like I mentioned earlier. It's like with Camp Blood. You know, it's neat to see, you know, what they would do. And of course, with Axe Grinder, you know, it's like you worked on part 2.
Yeah.
I think was it Paul Mieri did part 1. Joe Sherlock's doing 3. Sterling said Dennis Devine's doing like 4 and 5. It's cool just to see. I mean, I don't know all the ins and outs to those shows, but I it is kind of neat to see, you know, just here's the subject matter. How would you handle it? You know?
And once I announced that part 3 and 4 were coming out, David C. Hayes, who I'm a big fan of, said, I want to write it. He goes, I don't want to direct it. I just want to write it. So it's like whoever directs part 5, David C. Hayes will be writing it. But then somebody will direct from his script, because I did promise him that, because he is a good writer. And he did, you know, he's done so many films, and you know, like Peter Rottentail and some other films that I'm a big fan of. So I'm giving that to him, so to at least to write. So
cool.
Yeah. So one of the things that I did notice with the first Blood Cove is I was almost thinking, because then I want to talk about I'm almost done with the end of the notes for part 1. Is I almost felt that it kind of had like The Town That Dreaded Sundown, because one of them says, why does this place have power? And the guy goes, well, it's a generator. It hasn't had power for years. And I'm like, wait a minute, is somebody going into town and buying gas for the generator? Like, is there somebody else, or is the skull going into town but taking the mask off so he could go in and just, like The Town That Dreaded Sundown, where the guy would take the bag off and he could probably just go sit in a bar. I'm like, is the skull going in and just sitting in a diner eating breakfast? And then he like goes and gets fuel and then comes back and puts the mask back on. I'm like, or are there maybe two people here? Like he's the killer, then another guy does maintenance. And I'm like, huh. Well, so see, this is how my mind thinks.
that was a how are we going to explain that the place has lights on in the background? And it was honestly no more thought was put into it than that. Is there's a generator, but as you'll see in part 3, there's no way the skull could go into town and do anything without his mask. So that's a good question. I don't know the answer to that. Maybe he was sending Joni back into town. Maybe there's something with that. I don't know.
weird stuff that I think of, and
it's a good point though. I'm not sure how that happens. Maybe he knocked off a gas station attendant who was going to close his gas station down, and he's just using the surplus gas that's still there.
There you go.
Yeah,
okay. I don't know. Until that runs out, and then he kills the guy with the truck who brings in the gas, and
that's right. They burnt the place down. It doesn't matter anymore.
Well, and so that brings me, actually, is he supernatural? Is the skull supernatural?
Probably. I think that to have lived through the opening of part 2, and of course come back after the end of part 2, I wouldn't say supernatural as much as just unique in his makeup. Born of evil. I don't want to spoil too much. I may show you something after the show that I can't divulge here. It will ruin the plot for part 3. But he's a very unique character and maybe not quite human. So
okay. And the one scene I thought was very funny, the dad comes in, the detective is being beaten, and it literally looks like somebody took a bucket of blood and just threw it at him, because it's like a wave of blood. It's not a stream, it's a wave that hits him.
That was James Stevenson's idea. He goes, when Derek, because we're all good buddies, the three of us are, and my brother, we all hang out a lot just outside of the films. And he goes, what if when Darren comes around the corner, we just cream him with this bucket of blood? And I'm like, do it. So, and I'm like, Darren, just roll with what we're going to do. And he's like, what? And from the other end of the hallway, I'm like, you're going to come around the corner, just go with it. Just go. And Darren's very professional about things. And I'm like, you're going to get a little wet. And he's like, what? I'm like, action. And he come around the corner, and James just hurled the bucket. And I'm like, I guess Fontana really got killed. So he must have really gave him what for to generate that much blood. And it didn't make it
literally all the blood in his body went onto him.
At one time, it all just up from his legs everywhere, right into his stomach and out.
The skull just hit that one vein and just
it was for him. And I tell you what I thought it was a great idea that James had, because it really set the tone for that last section. And I think that what it did too was kind of like the breaking point for Michael Rivers, because my favorite single moment, although the shot in the rain is the best shot, I think, in the film, my favorite moment in the movie that kind of ties into to that thought about the blood is when Michael Rivers finds the camera up on the ledge, and then you see the shot of Jeff Angel, and he's holding the gun, and Jeff's fabulous, and he's a great person, and such a good actor, and love working with Jeff Angel. And he's standing there holding that gun, and he's listening, and Michael comes up behind him, and he says, my daughter's dead. And you get that silence, and Jeff just says, I know. It's like And Jeff
It's a
kind of
good
has
moment.
that
Jeff can say
moment,
it.
and I'm almost
Yeah.
getting goosebumps talking about it because, and I like the way, and you just hear the rain dripping in the basement. You hear it, and it's just that oh shit moment of like, I've neglected this my whole career, and look at what's happening. And it's almost like it's like it's all falling down around Jeff. So Darren has this very sobering moment or Michael Rivers, of it's like he's almost in this trance, and then he comes around that corner and the blood, and it almost snaps him back out of the trance that he's in from his daughter being dead, or so he believes. And I think that they both really sold that moment. And then with James's suggestion of the blood, it was exaggerated, but it was still cool, and it was a lot of fun. And that scene was tough to shoot. That fight scene at the end was a lot to do, but they pulled it off really well, I thought.
Oh yeah, definitely. And from there, then we get the skull kills the detective. Like they get into their fight. So
right.
Yeah, he dies. That's when the blood sprays all over him.
Mm-hmm.
Then the dad fights the skull, and he wins. Theoretically,
Right.
he wins. But then because he thinks his daughter's dead, he drives away in her truck. But we then see in the next room, she's hitting on the wall, yelling,
Right.
"Daddy, Daddy, I'm here. Daddy, Daddy."
Right.
So which then leads us into, turn the page, Blood Cove 2, Return of the Skull. And the first film is I have listed as 2019. This is listed as 2020. And I like their running times. Both are around 70 minutes, which I think is a good running time for these types of movies. Now, Lloyd Kaufman is in this, who I'll bring up later. But I have questions. So you have the new detective who goes into the haunt, and once again, spoilers for everybody, who tells them to burn it all down, like get the cops out, burn it all down. So the dad thinks his daughter's dead when she's not. She's banging on the door. The cop, who looks very Billy Bob Thornton. His hair, his voice, everything was very Billy Bob Thornton. And I thought it was very funny that at a crime scene, he's smoking a cigar.
That's right.
Yeah. And they burned the whole place down. What happens to Jody? What happens to the dad? What happens to the dog?
Did you notice when the one cop opens the door, he's taking the photos and he opens the door? Did you notice the bloody ropes on the ground?
That's right. Okay, but I thought that, yes, but I thought that was just from like another victim. So she made it out.
No, that was that's the very same room that Joni is in, with the wood paneling and the blue on the walls.
So she did make it
we
out.
put the blood back on. She did. So that's where part 3, the script opens with this sort of prologue in the 60s. But when the film, we'll say the film proper, after the credits, what it will do is part 3 picks up right as part 1 leaves off. And it actually will show Michael Rivers at the police station with the bloody sweater, that ugly blue sweater that he wore.
Oh, yeah, that thing was awful.
Well, we don't have the sweater anymore, so we're going to have to find something that looks like it. But he is talking to Chief Arnold, Detective Arnold at the time, played by C.A. McGregor, the Billy Bob Thornton character, who's a very good friend of mine. And C.A. is a terrific actor, and he really does justice to these kinds of roles. And that is the moment where it's like, this is happening. Your Fontana didn't take it serious. Now he's dead. Half your police force is dead. Get your head out of your ass and get out there and do something. My daughter's dead. It's like, it's a nightmare, So that prompts CA's character to take the police force out to the haunt, to do the burning and all that. In the meantime, when Michael's sitting, and this is spoilers for part 3, but it's really not, because from the trailers and things I'm sure we'll do, people will know Joni survived. You know, she's going to bust back in the door all bloody and whatnot, and it's like that moment of the two of them seeing each other, and then it cuts. And then the rest of the movie's three years later. So you've got this scene in part 3 that's going to be after part 1, but before part 2. Okay. And then the rest of part 3 will be after part 2, will be several years after those first 2 movies. So in part 2, I wanted to kind of dangle the ropes and say, for people to go, oh, maybe she did get out. And we probably should have showed more of that room. And I don't know, we could have done a better job, I think, with that. But
I should have put 2 and 2 together. I
well,
maybe just opened up a room and it was just a room with like somebody used to be in there. But that makes total sense. So that's good. Okay.
Well, and it's one of those things that for whatever reason, and I told Katie this initially, I said, I don't know why. I have no real justification for this in my brain, but I want Joni to be in part 3, not in part 2. And I don't truly know the answer to that. I just saw part 2. It's like part 1 was your event, and part 2 is the town dealing with the event. Because in real life, that's how it would be. It would be, you would have this horrible situation if it happened, and if the police were involved, it would become an issue of the town. And new people in real life would get introduced into this story.
Sure.
And I think that I didn't want to repeat myself of, oh, look, Joni's still in town. He's chasing her back to town to get her back. I didn't want to just do the same movie over again. And I think that's why, I think that would have been the obvious thing to do, is just have the skull chase Joni around for another 70 minutes. But I thought, no, I want to do something different, new characters, new settings, and then in part 3, catch back up with her and kind of explain how she got out and what's been going on since then.
Much better way to go. Much better.
Oh, yeah. Well, it's just try to make it a little more unique that way. So.
Yeah, and it's, you know, when you and I were messaging, and I said that it felt like there was like more maturity to the second one, which is why I like the second one better, even though I do like both. I like that it's larger and bigger. There's a little more drama. There's more locations. It just seems larger. It just seems like, as a filmmaker, as a writer, you kind of just grew, you know, when you were writing the second film, instead of just doing what you had mentioned, just, oh yeah, he could just chase her again. Well, yeah, but that was you back then. You know, this is you now wanting to evolve the story, and that takes, you know, maturity as a filmmaker.
Well, thank you. I'm glad that come off. I think that we're getting a little more polished as we go, you know, just from a production standpoint, figuring things out a little more. And I liked that part 1 and part 2. They're definitely, you know, companion pieces to one another, but I do like that they are their own, you know, entity as well, instead of just being one. I mean, you know, Halloween 2 is great, but you can only do Halloween 2 so many times before it's like, okay, it's the same night, it's the same exact thing. Like, I think that has its place too. I just didn't want to ape that idea, I guess, with this. So.
Yeah, no. And you went in that right direction. So, and on part 2, you were once again the writer, producer, director, editor, DP, a little bit of everything. Virgil's back doing the music. Lot of the same people seem to be returning for the sequel.
Oh yeah, I mean, you know, James Stevenson's still right there, you know, right-hand man, co-producer. You know, Ben Mair, my brother's still in the role of the skull. And really, you know, except for the flashbacks and seeing the body double for Jeff Angel on the ground.
Yeah,
actually
my father.
Yeah. my father-in-law was kind enough to come in, and he's done several roles for me before. But he and Jeff they have a similar height and build. They're both kind of bald-headed, and I thought, well, in the same shirt, you know, lit kind of similar. it won't be too big of a notice. Plus, Jeff lives 2 hours from here. I thought I'm not going to drag him 4 hours in the car to lay on the floor on the wet ground dead for an hour. So it made sense to get a body double. But really, Ben, as the Skull, is the only repeat cast member in part 2. It's a totally new batch of cast people in the second movie. So
yeah, because it's because now you got you now have Brooke and is it Evie?
Ava.
Can't read my own handwriting. So you got them two, and you introduced an interesting relationship between them two.
Of the two, of Brooke and Ava.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I just want to make sure I caught what you said. Yeah, that was something. There was a lot of talk behind the scenes, like, are we doing this to make any kind of statement or anything? I'm like, no, that's just the characters. That's the relationship, and I wish we could have explored that a little more. There was actually a few more scenes written with them together, but there was a scheduling conflict. And that's actually why, is it Ava? Ava's the girlfriend, right?
Yeah.
Brooks, the main character. Okay. It's been a while since I've seen it. That's why she disappears after that.
I was going to ask that she just kind of
disappeared. I had more with her in it, but there was a scheduling conflict. And then she got pregnant shortly after and had a baby. All of our actresses had babies at the very same time. I guess it's a pandemic just got you bored, I guess. But no, but Erin Swaby, Erin Faree, now she did a great job as Ava, and I wish we could have explored their relationship a little more, because I really liked that component of the movie. I liked the playfulness of the love scene in the movie. I liked the banter between them and the dad in the opening scene. I just really liked the two girls together in the movie. I wish we could have explored, and maybe, I have big ideas for the series. I would like to bring Autumn back in a part 4 if we were to do it. And it would be neat to explore more with that relationship or with other relationships that she had. But Autumn Hall is amazing. She plays Brooke, and she's been in a lot of our movies too. And she's a very, very good friend in real life. And she puts a lot of time and effort into her characters, and brings a lot of energy.
Yeah, she was good
to them.
Yeah.
So Brooke's my favorite character of part 2. I really like. Of course, it could be the dad too. I sure like.
The dad's nice. He's very understanding. So which is nice.
Yeah, I mean, and I think that's a good. I like that moment at the end between the two of them where, she says, like, I feel about Ava like, you did, Mom, and he says, I know, and I'm happy for you, and I love that, because like that's how it should be. So right. But it's
I was kind of wondering where Ava was, because I would think like, oh wait, she's Brooke's watching House on Haunted Hill by herself, and I'm just like, oh, wouldn't she be there too? Wouldn't both of them be together? And that's immediately what I thought. Oh, there must have been some sort of conflict or something, and the actress couldn't be there.
When they're laying in bed talking, and she at the very end, when she says, like, I hate that you have to go away for the weekend. Yeah, I know, your parents suck, blah blah blah. Yeah. No cell service. The whole idea was, we knew that day that it wasn't going to work like I had written. So those last 2 or 3 lines were ones that we added in the script the day of, to make sense of, because the original script had the characters together fighting. Ava was going to be killed off. Brooke was going to get drugged away as bait, as was filmed. That part of it, but initially there were more scenes of the two of them. It was just a scheduling thing, because Erin's great. I've worked with her several times since then. It was just a scheduling thing. So
At any point did you think of just recasting so you could get those other scenes shot?
That actually come up on the morning of, and we already had Mark Dessauer driving in from about 2 hours south of where we are, in Evansville. He's from Evansville. We're not. So, and we had locations planned that day. So I thought, now we'll just roll with it, and we'll make the best of it, because I wanted them together, and they're really good friends in real life. The two of those girls are. So I think that helped their relationship look a little more genuine in those two scenes, because they're very comfortable with each other in real life too.
Oh, that's good.
So anyway, and
Yeah.
The love scene that they did, that wasn't written to be as much, and they were like, "Can we play with this and have more fun with it?" And I'm like, "Sure." So I'm one of those, I will run the camera, you just do what you're going to do. And but no, I think
my next thing to bring up was that scene, actually, was because it's what I like about it, and there's no nudity, is they like, she hits her up against the wall, they fall on the floor, they got their shirts off, they're in bras. Cut to them done on the bed with just the sheets up. I'm like, oh, they're not wearing shirts. This is awesome. I hate sex scenes where people are lying in bed and like a woman's wearing a bra or a shirt, or the guy has a shirt on, and it's like, you know, I'm sorry, that just doesn't, who does that? Nobody just has sex and then puts on a bra. It's like
immediately after, right?
Yeah,
sure.
It was nice that, even though, like I said, there's no nudity or anything in it, so you don't see that middle section, but you are getting them with the bras. Nice, that's the start. You cut to the end, you see that they could be completely naked, you know, just with the sheet pulled up. And I'm just like, yes, good. I'm so glad that he went that direction with it.
Well, and you know, I mean, it's a personal preference. I am not sexy is great. I am not personally comfortable with asking someone to take their clothes off for the films, and it's just not really my cup of tea to do in my projects. I have nothing against it in other people's projects if that fits the style and how they work. I think sometimes it's almost more alluring to not to hint at, because I mean, you know, I don't mind a good love scene in a film, but a lot of the ones I like that I can pinpoint, they're not explicit at all. It's the way they're shot. It's the way that they're lit. And there's nothing special about the lighting in our scene. It was like, flip the light on and go. But at the same time, it wasn't supposed to be super moody. It was supposed to be this fun, quick, after school, let's do this before dad gets home kind of thing. It wasn't supposed to be a, you know, Andrew Stevens, Shannon Tweed situation. You know, it was, I mean, those are great too, but that wasn't this. So,
and I'm glad that it wasn't.
I think it was fun. Well, it didn't need to be big and epic. They'd only been in one scene previous to this. It was supposed to just be spunky and fun. That was the goal. And we actually used. There was a time where we didn't use Virgil's music. I found a piece of music under the Creative Commons license from one of the stock sites I subscribed to, and instead of pumped up kicks, it was kicked up pumps. So if you listen to that piece of music there, it has some similar beats to pumped up kicks, and I thought it sounded kind of, you know, I don't know, teenager like. And of course, both those girls are older than high school age, but I think they pulled it off.
Yeah. So. Oh yeah, they did a good job. And to go, so we got, so the skull is now burnt because he escaped the fire, and now he's just out killing. He's just killing. So we have he kills like a mechanic, he kills a farmer, There's actually a cool shot of like of a dead deer with flies on it, and like its eyes are missing. That's
my brother, I thought, was going to club me over the head that day. I'm like, hey, there's a dead deer. Let's go stand by it. He's like, why the hell would he have killed a deer? I'm like, I don't know, but it will make people uncomfortable. And he's like, well, it's making me uncomfortable because it smells like shit. And he didn't want to do it at all. And he goes, you better get this in one take because I don't want to stand by this stupid deer. So we did. That's why it's one pan over and a pan up, and then it's done. Because and of course I embellished the sound of the flies and all that to make it sound, more extreme or whatever. But that was the spur of the moment, coming from one location to another, and I'm like, hey, there's that dead deer. He's never let me live that down. He's like, I'll do the skull again, but I'm not standing next to any more dead animals. So
yeah, I felt sad for the deer, but it's a good shot. So it's like, well, it's already dead, so you might as well.
That's right. Well, I didn't kill it. Yeah. So
yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's free production value. So, and it's real. So you don't have to, it doesn't look fake or anything. There's another nice shot that I like is when the dad is, he's grabbing some coffee and he put the camera behind the coffee machine. So all the coffee stuff in the machine are like all in front of the camera, and he grabs the coffee, and that's when he goes to the daughter at the table. I thought that was a nice shot, because that's most people just would have done the other side. But you chose to shoot from almost like the POV of the coffee machine, looking at the dad. So that's actually the house I grew up in. That's my dad's house where we shot that at, and just how the house is laid out. The living room is kind of open concept, I guess, and it was honestly just kind of an easy setup to do it there, as opposed. Plus, I didn't want to show too much of the other part of the house. So I thought, well, that just sort of blocks it a little bit. Sometimes when you're scarce on locations, you cheat different things, and they end up looking cool. But at the time, it was more of a practicality thing. Hey, I don't want to show this side of the room, so you end up doing that by more out of necessity than an artistic thing. But I'm glad it come off that way. So. Yeah, I thought it looked interesting, and of course he. Excuse me, the skull kills Crazy Ethel. So that's well, I think we all know where that name comes from.
Yes,
I'm guessing it comes from the Crazy Ethel films, right?
Honestly, I don't know if I know what those are. When you said that, I'm
really?
Like, well,
Crazy. Yeah, I'm not.
Were those a shot on video thing or no?
Originally, the first one, which I want to say is 70s, like late 70s, I think was shot on like 16. And then they did a video follow-up to it, different name, but I think that was shot on VHS. And then there was a remake done called Crazy Fat Ethel. And I thought, oh, okay, he took the Crazy Ethel, just left out fat.
No,
I'm getting all these names wrong. I'm thinking, he took them from different movies, but no, you didn't.
Well, from now on, though, I will say it was from those movies, just to keep it more interesting. No, I actually didn't. Rebecca Elder plays that character, and we had a great time that evening because we just kind of let her do her thing, and it worked really well.
She was angry. She was angry, and she got that pitchfork in her. And that's something that I did write in my notes, is I thought that the skull looked great with a pitchfork. So just him walking around with that pitchfork looked really cool, being all burnt. That's like, so that's
the pitchfork we're all, because Darren keeps asking that. Are we going to have a consistent weapon? Is the pitchfork the weapon? Because in part one, he used a sledgehammer, he used a little knife. Different things, in two, it's clearly the pitchfork, and I think that the pitchfork may become that iconic weapon.
I was going to ask that. That's actually in my notes here. Does he have like a regular weapon? Like Freddy does and Jason and all of him. Does he have that weapon?
In my script for 3, I just a lot of times in death scenes, I script them out quick. They're not like she bats an eyelash and turns. It's like, okay, guy on bike dies. It's like guy comes out, does whatever. So I know in the script for part 3, it just says weapon, because I wasn't sure at the time, because I wrote that probably 8 or 9 months ago now, the part 3 script, maybe even longer than that. And at the time I wasn't sure, but since then, thinking about it, I think the pitchfork may be the way to go. So.
Okay, cool. And what is Armchair Fiction Magazine? What is that the cops were oogling over?
There is, I think it's called Sinister Cinema is the name of the company. And they, for the longest time, I bought like 2 DVDs from them, and they would send me these really nice paper books, like a catalog of all their titles. And I think it said Sinister Cinema.
Yes, I actually know that. Yeah.
Fiction.
Yeah, I know.
Okay, I think that's what it was, John. And I just actually cut the top of the book off because I thought, well, I think that picture was probably grabbed from, a public domain thing or something that's really old and, no one's aware of, and they put it on there. I hope I didn't not give credit to an artist who made it specifically for them. But I have a feeling that was probably an old piece of artwork. But who knows? It was just meant to be some bizarre looking porn or something that they were reacting to. So.
Yeah, because if it's Sinister Cinema, their logo was a ghost, like at a haunted house.
Yes.
And he had a TV show. I don't remember his second name or his last name, but it was Sonny. And he would host the show, or was filmed at the Winchester House of Mystery. And me living in Northern California, I knew where that was. And I've actually, I've driven past it. I never went inside. So I knew exactly where that was. And it was one of those shows where we played different horror movies, and stuff like that. And so you might have a little piece of history in there, because that's, I don't even know what happened to him. The show went off the air and all that.
Yeah, well, I hope I didn't offend anybody or take anything and use it without permission unknowingly. But hopefully, if anybody saw it who had a connection to it, they would be flattered that it was used. But maybe I should have left the Sinister Cinema on there. I don't know, but.
And I liked in the cell with the skull facing the wall when he's behind the bars. I thought that looked pretty cool. That was a nice shot of him just staring at the wall.
That was actually, I took a 2x4 or 2 of them, and I drilled holes in the 2x4, and I went and bought like 12 wood dowels at the hardware store, and I went out on a cold day when I knew the spray paint wouldn't react correctly. I knew it would bubble, and I wanted to do that. And so when I sprayed all those bars to look like old, crusty looking metal, because it was so cold out, the paint started to shrivel and look weird. And that was the whole that was the whole plan, was to where they would look garbled and nasty. And I just glued all those things in. And so all that jail is like a 5x4 piece that I built, and I just screwed it onto an old wood sawhorse and filmed through it, and that was our jail. So
nice. It looked good. Yeah.
So it was just $50 in materials and a screw gun, and there was the jail. So that thing sits proudly in my garage and takes up a lot of space because I just know we'll use it again.
Right.
So,
yeah. Oh yeah. You don't want to get rid of that. So
yeah.
And I knew something bad when the big guy there, the big cop, is sitting there and he's just looking through the catalog or book, and then the female cop comes up and starts asking questions, and I'm like, and once they hear a noise inside, I'm like, that's it, they're done. That's the second you hear that noise and he's taken away from looking at if she never came up, if she just went and got coffee or ate a donut and left him to read that magazine,
that's right,
he'd probably still be alive.
Yep.
Yeah, but because she had to say something, I'm like, oh no, don't do that. And then of course he goes in and he gets killed. And I like how the skull takes the keys out of his pocket. Nice little detail there. And then she gets killed. Right. And then that's when we cut to the the daughter, Brooke, and she's watching House on Haunted Hill. Got to get Vincent Price in there, of course.
That's
And
right.
then
Love Vince.
oh yeah, great movie, great actor, everything. Why House on Haunted Hill? There's a bunch of public domain films. Why that one?
I like that bit of dialogue where they're saying like, oh, if this was the house, about something about, getting killed or whatever, if there was a house to do it in, this would be the house. And then right afterward, he breaks in and tries to kill her, So I just kind of liked how that dialogue fed into that scene. I don't know if it was super noticeable or not, but I'm a big fan of that movie, and because it's public domain, and I made sure to track down a public domain copy and not the remastered one that Warner Brothers or whoever did, because I'm like, well, we don't want to get into an issue here. So I made sure it was one of the old garbled transfers, of the public domain version. Like, I don't want to get sued, but just, and to kind of, as a throwback to, just horror hosts and, people watching old scary movies, and I like that she was eating a bowl of popcorn, watching an old horror film, and then of course makes the comment about, these low budget horror films are so cheesy, which is a knock at us, by making low budget horror films,
Right.
So just as an in joke, but.
Yeah, that's funny. I did a short film called Skull Evil, and it's kind of a cosmic horror thing. And a couple is eating at the table, and you can hear on the TV is the trailer for House on Haunted Hill.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, because I wanted to make sure that as they're eating, you could hear, "Hello, I'm Vincent Price."
Yeah.
Welcome to the house. And it's just like, that's what I want in there. I want that in there. And because then since we're not looking at the TV and I'm not showing footage, I at least wanted people to know what the trailer,
what they were. Well, that's why I showed his face.
And here's a little something else too. The trailer that comes before it is the Flesh Eaters.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So you can hear somebody scream, and then the director comes on, and he's talking about the Flesh Eaters. So
okay, yeah. and that's where can I see that at? Is that something I can?
I will eventually be putting up 3 different versions of it on YouTube. Right now, it's in Fright Vision, which is released from Brad Twigg. That was originally going to be Frames of Fear 3, but he changed it and did a whole other thing with Frames of Fear 3, and then he made Fright Vision, so it's available on Fright Vision.
Okay, I know what the poster for Fright Vision looks like, but I've not seen that. So
yeah, there's 2 versions of Skull Evil on that. There's a black and white version, and then there's the regular version. So I decided
cool.
to Twilight Zone it or Outer Limits it. So, but
neat.
But yeah. So we got those similarities in both of our films.
Great minds think alike.
That's very true, and they drink coffee also.
I'm out. I don't have any more here.
I'm almost out. I'm almost out. Well, good thing is we're almost done. So almost done. Another shot that I liked is with the skull looking through the little square window on the door at the female cop as she's looking at the magazine. And then when he opens the door, she says, "I thought you died." I laughed at that. Then she's wiped out. And then the skull wipes out, the whole police station a la Terminator. It just kind of takes them all out.
Well, and that was a logistical thing, because initially we were going to actually show him kill all of the cops. And that's actually an active newspaper office where we shot the police station in both the movies. And I'm like, there is no way to do this without just this place being a nightmare to clean up, and carpet staining and all. I'm like, so forget it. You just hear it from the outside, and then you see everybody on the ground dead. So that that was just out of necessity why we did it. In a perfect world, we could have shown him go through, and that's why the last cop you see more, because he was away, and we were able to clean that concrete up a lot easier where his head explodes, because we weren't in there in the main office.
Oh yeah, we get that step. Yeah.
and that turned out, and Darren did a great job with that effect. And I know he
Yeah.
and James spent a long time setting that up while Ben and I were shooting some other stuff. And then we come in, and here it all was, that dummy head that he painted up, and you really don't see it at all. But the dummy head looked really cool, and you really don't see it. You just see the foot. You know, you just really see the foot. But there, if you, for a split second, you get a look at that dummy head. And for being made on the cheap pretty quick, I thought it looked pretty neat. So
it looked great. And he gets the double whammy of the pitchfork and the head squashing. So
yeah, and see, he's one of the haunted house guys, so he's all about the blood and gore, Alex Phipps, and you know he's and so's Kagan Inman and Vicky Boo that played the other cops, and Logan Wasnage. You know that they were all up for doing the bloody death scenes. We couldn't pull it off there.
Right. Well, it's effective. You cut to the outside, and then you hear the chaos. You know, the destruction.
Oh yeah,
and then it comes to the detective coming in, the Billy Bob Thornton guy coming in, and not hearing anybody and seeing, seeing what has happened, the massacre. So it works. It's effective. It's fine. You know, another shot that I like is when Brooke hears something at her house, and she's at the front door, and it's like a stained glass shot, and you kind of see her silhouette from outside. That's a nice shot.
I like that.
Yeah, that was very nicely done. Then we get to the fight between Brooke and the Skull. And one thing is, you had mentioned the Universal monster movies. You got that, which I think was intentional, is Brooke over his shoulder as he's walking away was very much like Frankenstein and the Mummy and all that stuff, carrying the women, always carrying the women. And I'm like, ooh, that's Universal right there. That's Mummy. That's Frankenstein. That's something.
It is. Yeah.
So I'm like, oh, I got to ask him about that. Now we could get into the man himself, Mr. Lloyd Kaufman, because there are, even though he's been in the movie, as we've been talking, there's a couple Troma references. How did you get him? Did you shoot his stuff, or did he shoot his stuff? What's going on with Lloyd?
I shot all that. Let's see, what year was that? I don't remember. 2016. See, that's another situation where we had him for X amount of time, and very much like the George Stover material, we worked with Lloyd for 3 hours, and I thought, well, we could get, a little more out of this than one movie. So he was actually in Graveyard Stories, the first one, as kind of the host, as the Boris Karloff Black Sabbath sort of role at the beginning and end of Graveyard Stories. That was the main movie we went to shoot with him. And I don't know if you're familiar, probably are, with Cinemassacre. He has a channel on YouTube.
No, I know him. Yeah, I'm subscribed to him. Yeah.
Okay, I think is it James Rolfe? Is that his name?
Oh, I don't know. I know I'm subscribed, but I don't know if I've watched a lot recently with him.
Okay, well, he's the angry video game nerd, that guy. He did an interview one time with Lloyd where Lloyd was talking about he would volunteer to work in these micro-budget movies to help out the filmmaker, because if there was somebody recognizable in it, it might help to sort of get some recognition on these movies. So he said, if the filmmakers make it easy for me, then I will show up in these sort of lower budgeted projects. And it was right around Christmas, and I sent his manager an email and I thought, this is a long shot. It's probably not going to happen. I said, yada, yada, Moonlight Films, Ian Mair, what is the likelihood of working with Lloyd? And he said, well, where are you? And I said, well, we're in Southern Indiana. And he said, well, Lloyd is coming to Indy PopCon. I think it was like July of that year. And he said, could you come to Indianapolis and shoot up here in his hotel room? And I'm like, sure. So Indianapolis is 2 hours. So James Stevenson and I got in the car and packed up all of our stuff and all of the, the phone and all the office supplies that he had for the mayor's office, and the black sheet and the red cam light for Graveyard Stories, and shot the whole for both movies in his hotel room at the same time. And just like the George Stover material from part 1, where he was like, the evil, it's out there, get the evil, it will kill. It was the same story with Lloyd, where it's like, get the thing and, lock it up, and then why did the cops let it out, and all that kind of stuff. What the hell is going on here? Again, we had no idea where it was going to go. The difference is, you think about this, the Lloyd Kaufman material was shot in 2016, late 2016. It would have been, is that right? Yeah, 2016.
Oh, wow.
And it didn't, so the Lloyd footage predated everything in both these Blood Cove movies. And I had to, and there was just never the right project. And I thought, well, one day we will, because he did release forms for both. And he said, what do you want me to call this? And I said, don't call it anything, because we don't know what it is yet. And he put, sounds good, boys, and signed it. And he was like, have a good time, have a good night, and
that is awesome.
And very, very good to work with. And his wife was super sweet, and they just invited us into the hotel room. And we ended up being there for about 4 hours, because there was a point where some trauma people had an issue with the booth they were setting up downstairs, and they had to come in and get Lloyd to help them with it. So we just kind of hung out and waited. And when Lloyd come back into the room, he said, Pat, we owe these boys 45 more minutes, so he was very, very, very true to his commitment of the 3 hours, that we got that 3 hours worth. So we were very, very lucky to get to work with Lloyd. So yeah, the same thing. I wrote, CA's material to match with Lloyd Kaufman's line. Yeah, there he is, the man that that we had. There.
Biggest picture, well, of course, on the back.
That's right. Well, we have to. It's Lloyd. So, but that's why C.A. McGregor, his dialogue is the way it is in the film, and he played Chief Arnold is because Lloyd talked to a character named Chief. The chief. So I had to work with that material. So that's why, and of course, Gallagher, the guy that was handing out the flyers, that was shot in 2019. And I acted opposite Lloyd in that hotel room, and I had him speaking the lines to somebody off camera. And then I set up a room in my house with the bookcase with the certificates of Mayor Richards, and I tried to light it kind of that orangey look that was in that hotel room to match the footage of Lloyd, to make it look. So those guys were shot 3 years apart.
Oh, wow.
So anyway, but
man, that is awesome.
Well, and little things like, vote for Mayor Richards and all that, the flyers and things. And then later on, when I like the scene where Brooke gets the phone call, soliciting votes at 11 o'clock at night. Are you going to vote for? It's like nobody else is running, but yet this guy is getting phone calls. Probably the guy handing out the flyers making the 11 o'clock phone call.
Right.
But the whole idea was to make Lloyd's presence in the movie a little bit bigger. You saw him early on the flyer, and then you hear his name later on the phone call. And it was just to make Mayor Richards a little more of the proceedings, So anyway.
Yeah, no, that's great. And I think now whoever created I could shoot something in Las Vegas that you can put into your film over there was a genius. Now yes. I think you've taken it up that one notch more by, we're going to film something with you in 2016 by saying thing, it, whatever it is, very vague, that then we can put into a movie that's shot years later. So I think you've actually evolved the, filming in one location to use for a film that you didn't even make, that you didn't even have. I think it's genius. I'm gonna have to do that.
Oh,
I'm stealing it. I'm stealing it. It's that simple.
It's commerce. You know, you go, we have no money. We're going to drive all the way to Baltimore, Maryland to film. We've got this genre legend with George Stover. Why shoot for one movie when you can shoot for two movies? You know, it's like, and
Genius.
The thing is, I'm always kind of one movie ahead with what we're working on, and at least mentally. So, what happened with Jim O'Rear also? We brought Jim O'Rear up from Nashville, Tennessee for Graveyard Stories. And the only pitfall with Jim is I had him shoot some material for a science fiction movie with some scenes, it's just one big scene, I guess, opposite Tara Bixler, who played Bella in Blood Cove 1. And unfortunately, we've not done anything with that footage. So, but someday Jim O'Rear could emerge in a brand new movie, something again we shot 4, 5, 6 years ago, you know. So
I like him too.
But so far, Jim's great, and see, he just filmed some stuff for me for Grim Reaper, and he shot that in Florida. So, but I feel kind of bad for Jim because, you know, we did those extra sequences, and so far his extra footage hasn't made it anywhere. No knock on him, he's terrific. It's just that project, that storyline is a little loftier than what we can probably do right now. A little too ambitious. So one day we might get to it. So.
Man, that's I'm telling you, that's genius. Like I said, I'm stealing it. I'm taking it.
Do it well, and rumor is one John Ward might show up in a future Moonlight Films production.
It's that's very true. Thank you. Yes,
I hope so.
I would absolutely be honored to. So yeah, I think it'd be awesome. And then that brings us to the old Craven barn. I'm sorry, the old Craven farm, which I did notice there was some snow on the ground. So that must have been shot during the winter. And we got the fight between the detective and the skull. And then the detective hangs, or the dad hangs the skull. He's got the chain around him and he's hanging. And I'm like, oh, no way, he's not dead. There's no way. No. His head's not ripping off. You know, we're not seeing eyes open or anything, but I know he's not, that he's not dead. So hence you've been talking about part 3. So I'm assuming I'm correct. But it was
part 3 has no skull. It's just going to be a big love story. No. That sounds awful.
Yeah, it's gonna be Pretty Woman, but with the skull.
That's right.
And then we have the cemetery scene that we had discussed about with Brooke and her dad, and and that's where part 2 ends. And I just said, there's no way that the skull is dead. He can't be. You know, it would have been a much more violent death, I think, if you wanted to really kill him off.
Well, I think that's, you know, I mean, obviously there's going to be a part 3. I don't know. The ending of 3 is a little more definitive as far as the script goes. Who knows what will happen as we shoot it? You know, it's going to lead to a big confrontation between Joni and the skull, which I think is a long time coming, because although she escaped in part 1, and you get a little clue of that in 2, I think that the audience who likes these movies probably wants to see that, you know, her come back to Beansboro and maybe end it, you know. I'm not, who knows. So.
Oh no, you can't end it. You can't, no, because then you said, you know, it's got to continue. Then you got to have somebody else take it over and see what they could do with it. So that's
right. Yeah, we'll never know. It could Blood Cove 4 could be in Las Vegas. So.
No. Wow. Okay. There we go. All right. There you go.
I'd love to go out there and help.
Hey, we got plenty of places to stay out here. So I'm telling you, there is a whole group of people out there now. These low budget, even micro budget filmmakers that are just making these awesome slasher films that, you know, I just want people to watch, and I want people to watch your films. I want people to watch Blood Cove 1 and 2. I want them to watch the other films.
Well,
You
thank
know,
you.
there will definitely be that link down there below to, you know, to YouTube. But we probably should wrap this up because I think we've gone actually over 2 hours, and I know it's late for you. So
Okay. Well,
is there
I'm not worried. I would be home editing, you know, so so no, this is good.
well, then let me ask you then, because I left off some stuff I was going to just talk about because of time. What horror films inspire you? Like, what made you want to make horror movies, and especially slasher films or vampire films?
I mean, the obvious ones, you know, with slashers, you've got, you know, John Carpenter's Halloween and Friday the 13th and those things. But I think sometimes, like, you know, vampire movies would be like Dark Shadows, the original series with, you know, Jonathan Frid and of course Universal. I like Full Moon really well. Charles
Yeah.
Band, the Puppet Masters and Trancers and Subspecies, all those things. Um, I like Roger Corman's films a lot.
Oh, Roger Corman
A
is
lot of
the
the earlier.
king to me. Yeah.
Oh, of course. You know, just I fawn over the Edgar Allan Poe films that he did
Oh
with
yeah.
Vincent Price and I like Amicus horror films a lot. And Hammer, of course, too. You know, I think a lot of my inspirations do seem to be older. I think that the 80s was almost kind of the end of kind of that gritty feel. It felt more, I guess, real. It seemed like in the 90s things got slicker looking and maybe a little overproduced. So I think a lot of things I gravitate toward do look maybe a little grungier or a little more earthy, if that makes any sense,
Sure.
than something that looks really Hollywoodized and really polished. And I feel like the older I get, the more I flock to independent stuff. A lot of what I buy anymore, I don't buy a whole. I've got a 1-year-old. You don't buy anything when you have a 1-year-old. But it is a lot of more of the micro budget stuff because I think that it's neat to look at what other guys and gals are doing on more on your level because you can say, okay, this is something we believe we can pull off something, you know, in that vein. Whereas if you look at a movie that's made for $400 million, it's like, well, you're never going to make that. That's not, you know, you're not even aiming for the same crowd. And that's something I had to come to terms with a few years ago. I had to say, Ian, you're not making movies for the mainstream. These are not the same people watching these who are watching, you know, the home shopping network. These
Right.
are horror people. You're making it for horror. So to hell with what mainstream audiences want. You're not making it for the mainstream. You're making it for horror people, you know?
Sure.
And I think that as time goes on, there's even a bigger sect of horror people who like the micro budget. They like these more grassroots films, and I think that, you know, and it's easier to do because, you know, the cameras are more accessible to work with, and I think that, you know, I've been asked that before. Do you see these people as a competition? Not really, because streaming sites, you know, you can get a lot of stuff out there. And I think the internet, Lloyd told James and I that. He said, boys, the future of, you know, independent film is the internet. And it's true. I mean, as much as I love to hold the thing, I don't feel like I own a movie unless I can hold it in my hand. But I do believe that streaming is probably you know, that's the way it's going. So I think that,
Yeah.
you know, it's just what we have to do, you know. So although inspired by all this old stuff, I have to look at the future and go, well, where is it heading? You know? So
Oh, that's the great thing about Tubi. They sure got a lot of horror movies on there, and they go from micro
yes,
budget up to, you know, millions of dollar movies. So
right.
it's they don't seem to be prejudiced on what they put up. So
I need to look into that because I know that seems to be kind of the go-to right now. I need to get into that a little more.
Yeah,
I have
people have asked me, how did I get Aximus 1 and 2 on there? And I'm like, I don't know. I didn't do it. I have a distributor, so I
really?
don't know. Yeah.
Okay, so the distributor put those on there.
Yeah, which would be Screamtime Films. That would be Todd Fallon Cook. And
Okay.
and I even asked him, how did they get up there? And he's like, I don't know. I think it's called Film Hub, that you could sign up on Film Hub, and they distribute your movie to all the different places. And I think he went through them, and they got him onto Tubi.
That's neat. Okay. Yeah. It's cool though. They have a life of their own that way. They're just out there doing their thing.
Yeah, and they're 30 minutes each. So it's not like they're worried about time. You know, oh no, 30 minutes, we can't do 30 minutes. It has to be like an hour and a half at least. No, they're 30 minutes. So they'll accept short films, not just feature.
I love that. I love that the Aximus films are the length that they are. And you said, 70 minutes is a sweet spot for these kind of things. I know with Grim Reaper, the one we just shot, it's an hour with the credits. And I'm like, to me, that's the story. I told the story. It doesn't need to be an hour and a half. That's what it is. And I look at a lot of other, indie filmmakers, and I'm like, their films aren't particularly long because a lot of times the subject matter doesn't call for a 2-hour runtime. So I think, to me, it's better to have 30 minutes of really entertaining material as opposed to 2 hours or even an hour and a half of like, okay, we get it. I think that's important. So.
Yeah, it is. And I know, like with Meat Hook 4, Dustin Ferguson edited the movie, and I just said, put in everything. It has to be 70 minutes. Put in everything. Everything. Make it 70 minutes. And it works.
Come on. I mean, my thoughts. I love the Meat Hook Massacre series, but part 4 is my favorite.
Thank you.
Yeah, I like part 4 a lot, and I like 4 and 5 and 6 really well. I think it's cool. I like ongoing slashers, and I like Camp Blood and another one. It's indie. I can't remember now. Well, anyway,
there's so many.
You can't go wrong with a good slasher.
No. So I am now, because we are now at, at least for me, it's 9:49. So we've been doing this for a while. I'll ask one last question, and then I'll let you go.
Okay.
So what, if anything, do you want to promote anything like past, present, future? What would you like for people to look for? And where can they find stuff?
One quick, I did bring these. I'm at a borrowed location because I didn't want to be too loud at my home office. There is an artist out of Illinois that does the artwork for a lot of our films, and I brought these along just to show you. This is the Blood Cove
that is awesome
that he did, and his name's Paul Spangler. And Paul is an artist for hire, and I highly recommend, if you need any artwork done, to look him up if you don't have an ongoing person. But he does these paintings for me, and then that's what I use for for the covers. And let's see, with Grim Reaper, that will be our 4th film that he has done the artwork for, and I love involving Paul. He does so many different styles, and if you tell him what your budget is to work with, he will work with that, and Paul is excellent. So I wanted to give a shout out to Paul. So
yeah, no, I'm glad you did, because the covers are really nice, and it's great that you have them framed. So yeah, no, I'm glad that you did, because these are great. I mean, everything. Yeah, I mean, it's.
Well, yeah, I like the continent. I part of me wishes I hadn't put the red. I kind of wanted this to look like maybe like an old VHS tape that you would have seen, on a shelf in 1985. Just kind of the painted and the text being on the front, and not, because you used to see that on a lot of VHS covers. Your credits would be on the front of the tape and not the back of the tape, you know? So just something, I don't know, just to make it a little different.
Right. No, man, they look good. No, please. I'm glad that you, does he have a website or anything, or YouTube or Facebook?
He's got a Facebook. It's just Paul Spangler. If you look up his, I'm sure he's probably got a website. And he does things, you know, freelance stuff, and then he does things that he'll just make up on his own, and he'll sell, you know, on eBay or at shows, and or it's, you know, it's work for hire. But yeah, Paul is terrific, and he's just, I like that he loves horror films himself, so he really understands what that artwork looked like. You know, the older school, the old posters that were painted, you know, that weren't just a Photoshop. Those are great too, because a lot of our, I mean, this one I really like. I did this one myself for Fangs, and you know, and I did that. I took the picture and did the editing and all, and I like it really well too. And it's something just made on the computer, you know. So
sure. No, that was nice too. Yeah.
When talking about promoting other films, this would be one, if you like our material, that I would recommend. I like Fangs a lot. This one is doing really good on YouTube. It's consistently our #1 movie right now. Very, very happy with this. And I think my all-time favorite will still be The Maker of Monsters. I really dig this movie. Throw back to the Wolfman, and Paul did this artwork too. But really like it. So if you like our material, these two, I think, would be two other films to check out on our list. That they're two of our better projects, I think. So
yeah, and I'll have links down for all that stuff. So yeah. Okay, cool, man. Awesome. All right. Well, then I'm gonna let you go then, because it's getting late, and
okay.
You have a 1-year-old, so
he's asleep. Hey, it's been great talking to you. I really enjoyed, and it was an honor to be asked to be part of this.
Oh, well, you're welcome, and thank you. It's an honor to have you on. So, like I said, I'm just finding all these awesome filmmakers, and I want people to see their stuff and rent it and buy it and enjoy it and distribute it. That I can't get enough of this stuff now. So so thank you for being here. I really do appreciate it. So,
well, hey, if we can build each other up, that's the best thing we can do. You know, like you said, keep it positive the best we can, and you know, just keep making good movies. So yeah, very true. So, all right, everybody. Well, all those links and everything, like I said, are going to be down there below, and please check out their website or their YouTube channel, and because it's got everything on there. So that's where I first started watching stuff. So, all right. So I'm going to say goodnight to everybody, and Ian, thank you once again. I appreciate it. And I will thank you, sir.
Oh yeah, and I will catch everybody on the next One Filmmaker, One Film. This is my hand. Bye, everybody. Hey everybody, thanks for hanging out after the video, and thank you for watching the very first Dark Park Films sponsored video. And who is that sponsor? Well, I've now learned if I do this with my hands, they go to the right area. There we go. That would be Wildlife Command Center Coffee, and you can purchase it right there. You can go to their website, which is BUYWCC.com, and pick up their coffee. They have 2 blends, which I'm going to show you now. The first coffee is this one right here. This is a breakfast blend. It's 10 ounces, and it is a medium ground. And it does say, and it's breakfast, like I said, and this is what it says right here. It says, early bird can catch the worm. So there you go, a breakfast blend coffee that helps you catch the worm in the morning. And I really like this one. I'm more of a breakfast kind of blend coffee guy in the morning. So this one I really like. It has that little bit of oomph to it to kind of get you moving, get you up and out. And so I really enjoy this one, but that doesn't mean that I don't like the other one, which is this one right here. This is a dark roast. It is also 10 ounces. And both of these are $7.99 at their website. Pretty good price for 10 ounces worth of ground coffee. This one is, it's a little darker. So it's, I think it's better for drinking at night. Maybe if you're, writing a screenplay or if you're filming, this has got that oomph, that double punch to get you going. So this is one that I also recommend. I like both of these quite a bit, but I kind of do, the breakfast in the morning and then the dark more at night. So I recommend both of these quite a bit. And how did I find out about these two, these two coffees here? And how did I find out about Wildlife Command Center? Well, when I was working on Night of the Zomghouls, there was a box of coffee that was just sitting there filled with coffee. And we didn't know what to do with it. Like, whose is this? Who brought it? Why is it here? And so we just kept going to the store and buying coffee. And then one day I said, why don't we just get the coffee out of the box and use that instead of, wasting money on going to Smith's or whatever and picking up coffee. So we did. We did not realize that it was the Wildlife Command Center coffee and that it, was sponsoring the movie. And it was great coffee. Everybody loved it. And we just went right through it. By the last day of filming, this coffee was gone. And I went and found out, about Wildlife Command Center, asked if they would like to be a sponsor for Dark Park Films, for their coffee. As many of you know, I love coffee. I love coffee mugs. And so this was a perfect match. And Wildlife Command Center is great with animals. So they provide a great service for rescuing animals. So it's kind of that double whammy for me, where coffee, helping animals, you can't go wrong. And they were even cool enough to send me, get in there, a coffee mug, because they knew that I liked coffee mugs. And right now, I don't get that. A little bit. I'm going to go on the keyboard, but that's their dark blend, because I'm recording this at night. So I am actually drinking that while recording. Also, one thing that you can get at their website, which is cool, is you can get this. There you go. This pocket knife, which is $9.49. And this is pretty cool because it has their name on it. Wildlife Command Center, we can catch it. And this is what it looks like. Put that down there. There we go. Fully out. So you're getting like the bottle opener, you got the corkscrew, you got a screwdriver, you got a blade, and then you got this little hook thing that you could pop it into something that doesn't have a tab, and then the liquid or whatever in there will come out. So this is pretty cool. And I'm just going to keep mine in my car, because you never know, you might need a pocket knife. So please support them. I'm going to have links down below, where you can, check out just the Wildlife Command Center. I'll also have a link for Wildlife Command Center coffee, and it will basically be for both these guys right here. And please support them. I support them. I think what they do is pretty awesome. And maybe this coffee will be on your set or in your kitchen. It will definitely be, on my set in my kitchen. I know that. So please, once again, I'm going to show you these. Please go to their website and pick up their coffee and make it part of your day or night, depending on which one you like. So that'll be about it. I really appreciate it. Thanks for hanging out with me. And yeah, so thank you. And once again, please support my channel. Please support the Wildlife Command Center, and I will catch you later. Bye.